Chapter 1164. Crimson Dragon Wuzun. Tianyang shuddered and looked at the dragon saint in disbelief. The Crimson Dragon tribe had a long history, and there might be countless crimson dragons like Wuzun. However, Tianyang was certain that the dragon saint was talking about the ancient Wuzun in the Tianxiao Great World, the Almighty who created the 9 refined dragon body. Of course, that Almighty was nothing in the Xiantian Great World. Therefore, Heavenly Sun had some doubts about whether the Crimson Dragon Saint had mentioned the Crimson Dragon Martial Sovereign that he knew. I'm talking about the Crimson Dragon Wuzun, who created the 9 refined dragon body. Red Dragon Saint laughed. Hearing this, Tianyang's pupils shrank, a look of disbelief on his face. The strongest Crimson Dragon Wuzun was only one Wuzun, and that was the Wuzun from hundreds of millions of years ago. Compared to the Crimson Dragon tribe, it was like a drop in the ocean. How could such an existence attract the attention of the Dragon Saint? A great saint. The Crimson Dragon Wuzun cultivated a different body technique from yours. However, hundreds of millions of years ago, he made great contributions to the Crimson Dragon tribe. The Dragon Saint smiled. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the Crimson Dragon tribe was far from being one of the 4 strongest dragon tribes in the true dragon sacred domain. At that time, the Crimson Dragon tribe had not fully entered the true dragon sacred domain. However, the appearance of one person affected the entire Crimson Dragon tribe. The Dragon Saint said. Tianyang raised his eyebrows. No matter how weak the Crimson Dragon tribe was, it was still a part of the dragon tribe. There were definitely experts above the 5th level of the Wuzun realm. Even if the Crimson Dragon clan was the weakest clan hundreds of millions of years ago, and the Crimson Dragon Martial Honorable had just become a Martial Honorable not long ago, and he was still a human, he should not have attracted the Crimson Dragon clan's attention. In the beginning, the Crimson Dragon Wuzun did not affect us at all. The Crimson Dragon tribe only accepted him for a variety of boring reasons. However, he was interesting. When he saw us, he was so scared that he activated his half-human, half-dragon state. The Crimson Dragon tribe, who had just suffered a great calamity, thought that the humans had come again. After clearing the misunderstanding, he would bring a group of juniors with him from time to time. He also discovered some bloodline talents that even the Crimson Dragon tribe did not know about. Upon hearing this, Tianyang was shocked. Crimson Dragon Martial Honorable had not only successfully ascended, but he had also come to the mysterious sky world. Also, he was fighting the red dragons of the spiritual state in the Xiantian Great World. Strangely enough, the Crimson Dragon tribe did not know as much about the Crimson Dragon tribe as a human who had ascended from another world. However, under the leadership of the Crimson Dragon Wuzun, the Crimson Dragon tribe became the dragon tribe with the deepest inheritance in the spiritual state hundreds of millions of years ago. We soon entered the true dragon sacred realm. The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled. When he talked about the history of the Crimson Dragon tribe, he was very amiable, like an uncle next door. It was as if he was not the supreme saint who had dominated the entire heavenly dragon city and suppressed the heavenly dragon saint. Thanks to him, the Crimson Dragon tribe rose much faster than usual. Otherwise, the Crimson Dragon tribe would not be one of the 4 overlords of the true dragon sacred realm. The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled. Tianyang nodded slightly. Sometimes, your opponent knew you better than you did. The era in which the Crimson Dragon Wuzun lived was the Primordial Age. He fought against various races in the Tianxiao Great World, including the Dragon tribe. Tianyang sensed that the Crimson Dragon tribe was not much different from the Crimson Dragon tribe in the Tianxiao Great World. Therefore, Tianyang could understand why the Crimson Dragon Wuzun could help the Crimson Dragon tribe rise. Most of the Draconians you saw were humans who had cultivated the 9 refinement dragon body to a certain extent. They had the bloodline of the Crimson Dragon tribe. The City Lord of Flowing Sky City was one of them. The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang was surprised. The 9 refinement dragon body was not common among the Crimson Dragon tribe. However, most of them did not even cultivate the 3rd refinement of the 9 refinement dragon body. Those who were talented could not surpass the previous refinements. Moreover, the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun only managed to cultivate the 5th refinement. You, on the other hand, have cultivated the 6th refinement and are close to the 7th refinement. You are completely different from the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun of the past. The Crimson Dragon Saint looked at Tianyang curiously. I want to know, what is your relationship with the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun? Tianyang raised his eyebrows. This question was similar to when the Crimson Dragon Saint had asked him about the origin of the purple gold dragon god token. However, the nature of their relationship was completely different. Sword Venerable Lin was probably a powerful cultivator in the Xintian Great World at that time. He should not have had much to do with the Crimson Dragon tribe. However, the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun was the benefactor of the entire Crimson Dragon tribe. If Tianyang admitted that they had a relationship, the Crimson Dragon Saint would very likely help him to a certain extent. It doesn't matter, Tianyang said with a shrug. I thought you would say that you had a relationship, or that you had received the inheritance of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun, or something like that. The Crimson Dragon Saint was a little surprised. As a cultivator, he should have prioritized benefits. Now, he only needed to say a few words to gain a considerable amount of benefits. How could Tianyang refuse? It doesn't matter. Besides, I only received the 9 refinements dragon body. It shouldn't be considered an inheritance. Tianyang shrugged. Hearing this, the Crimson Dragon Saint laughed. Fortunately, you said that it doesn't matter. Otherwise, if it did, I might not be able to give you the treasure left behind by the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun. The Crimson Dragon Wu Zun only managed to cultivate to the half-saint level in the end before he passed away. Even the saints of the Crimson Dragon tribe couldn't help him. However, before he died, he left behind an inheritance in the highest sacred ground of the Crimson Dragon tribe. It was specially left behind for the people of the Tianshao Great World. The Crimson Dragon Saint said. Tianyang was stunned. Inheritance? Before he knew this secret, Tianyang might not have cared about the inheritance of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun. After all, although the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun was strong, he was only in the realm of Wu Zun. However, things were different now. Although the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun was only a half-saint before he died, he was the half-saint who was the benefactor of the entire Crimson Dragon tribe. The inheritance that he left behind must be extraordinary. However, if you don't have a good character, I can't give you this inheritance. But now I can, the Crimson Dragon Saint said. At this moment, they stopped. They flew past the entire Crimson Dragon City and arrived at the heart of the Crimson Dragon tribe. Chapter 1165. The Crimson Dragon Pagoda. As a pagoda that had existed since the Crimson Dragons entered the True Dragon's sacred domain hundreds of millions of years ago, there were countless treasures stored in the Crimson Dragon Pagoda. Among them, there were many half-sage weapons, sacred weapons, and even sage and great sage weapons. Even the Crimson Dragon Saint would not be able to bring anyone into such a pagoda easily. However, when the Dragon Saint mentioned the name of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun, the 2 guards guarding the Crimson Dragon Pagoda were immediately filled with respect and let them in. Seeing this, Tianyang deeply understood the status of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun in the Crimson Dragon tribe. In fact, the things that the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun left behind are very different from the treasures that he left behind at the beginning. The Dragon Saint explained as he walked in the Crimson Dragon Pagoda. When the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun passed away, the Crimson Dragon tribe had grown stronger, but it was not as strong as it is now. The treasures that he left behind were precious, but they were not too strong. Therefore, the Crimson Dragon tribe added many treasures to them. The things that Wu Zun left behind now are much stronger than before. You have benefited from it. The Dragon Saint smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed, revealing a trace of surprise. He did not expect such a pleasant surprise. Almost the entire Crimson Dragon tribe cultivates the 9 refined dragon body. However, pure-blooded true dragons do not need it, and it is difficult for half-dragon people to cultivate it to a high level. However, we also know that the 9 refined dragon body needs dragon blood the most. Back then, the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun collected a lot of dragon blood. Now, we have added more powerful dragon blood. The 9 refined dragon body that you are cultivating now should be different from the Crimson Dragon Wuzuns. However, the most fundamental part should be the same. The dragon saint said. With the eyesight of a supreme saint, he instantly noticed the difference between Tianyang's aura and the 9 refined dragon body. His origin hadn't changed, but he had walked on a path that was even more powerful than the original Crimson Dragon Wuzun. As expected, the human race's talent is the strongest among all the races. The Crimson Dragon Saint thought to himself. At that moment, they arrived at the top of the Crimson Dragon Pagoda. The inheritance of Crimson Dragon Wuzun is here. By the way, Crimson Dragon Wuzun also left an identification stone at the entrance to check if it is the Tianshao Great World, but since you have cultivated the 9-tempered dragon body, there should be no problem. You can walk on your own now, the Crimson Dragon Sage said. Tianyang nodded slightly and walked in. The inheritance left behind by the Crimson Dragon Wuzun was located at the top of the Crimson Dragon Tower. From this, it could be seen just how much the Crimson Dragon clan respected Wuzun, who had led them to rise to power. However, this respect had allowed Tianyang to reap a lot of benefits. The Xintian Great World and the Tianshao Great World were too far apart. Someone who could cross the starry skies and arrive at the Xintian Great World was not Wuzun, who had just ascended and had extraordinary strength. Either that, or someone who had gone through the trials of the Great World and might have looked down on Wuzun's inheritance. The only person who had met the first requirement, cultivated the 9-tempered dragon body, and was even discovered by the Crimson Dragon clan, was Tianyang. This was an opportunity left behind hundreds of millions of years ago, and now Tianyang had completely collected it. Is this the identification crystal left behind by the Crimson Dragon Wuzun? When he arrived at the top, he looked at the crystal at the entrance. The crystal wasn't gorgeous. In fact, it could even be said to be crude. When the Crimson Dragon clan had added treasures to it, they hadn't thought of touching it at all. Now, this crystal ball, which was as tall as a person, was still the same as it was hundreds of millions of years ago. This is the world origin of the Tianshao Great World. Tianyang looked at the crystal ball as tall as a person. His pupils constricted slightly as he spoke in an almost imperceptible whisper. Perhaps to the Crimson Dragon clan, this crystal ball was similar to the crystals that could be seen everywhere by the roadside. However, Tianyang, who came from the Tianshao Great World, could tell. This crystal ball contained the incomparably familiar aura of his homeland. No wonder the Crimson Dragon Wuzun was so certain that this identification crystal could identify people from the Tianshao Great World even after countless years. The world origin, let alone hundreds of millions of years, will never change even after billions or billions of years. Tianyang chuckled. Then, he reached out and touched the crystal. At the instant when Tianyang's finger touched the crystal ball, Tianyang's expression changed. An incomparably terrifying light suddenly erupted from within the crystal ball. That light was like a sharp sword that pierced through the heavens. It even penetrated the barrier of the Crimson Dragon Pagoda and illuminated the entire sky. It was as if it caused the entire world to tremble. In fact, that was exactly the case. Although the Tianshao Great World's power was not as strong as the Xintian Great World, they were both great worlds in the galaxy. In terms of grade, the two worlds were the same. And Tianyang's body, after experiencing one great calamity after another, was almost filled with the world origin of the Tianshao Great World. Normally, it would not be a problem. However, once it came into contact with the world origin of the Tianshao Great World hundreds of millions of years ago, it resonated. In an instant, an incomparably terrifying power broke through the sky, causing the entire true dragon sacred domain to tremble. What the hell is this? Qi Yingtian, who had just walked out of the Crimson Dragon Pagoda, looked at the sudden burst of light in the sky and was completely stunned. Even his father, the Crimson Dragon Sage, could not cause the entire true dragon sacred domain to tremble. The Crimson Dragon Sage, who was waiting on the next level, also had a look of surprise on his face as he looked up. World. World origin. Boom. The contact between the world origin and the world origin only lasted for about 3 seconds. After all, both sides did not have the complete world origin. Being able to cause the true dragon's sacred domain to tremble was already the limit. Of course, such a powerful world origin resonance naturally passed the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's appraisal perfectly. The treasury that stored the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance and countless other treasures added by the Crimson Dragon tribe was open to him. The door opened, and Tianyang stepped inside. In just an instant, an incomparably terrifying blood aura with dense dragon aura rushed towards Tianyang. The blood aura in the air seemed to be able to materialize, causing the entire space to be dyed in a layer of blood red. However, this blood aura did not have the slightest smell of blood. Because this blood aura actually came from, there seemed to be an endless amount of true dragon bloodline essence in this space. P.S. The author is about to take the middle school exams. Yesterday, I was negotiating with the high school about signing a contract, so I'm really sorry for the delay in updating. Chapter 1166. Almost endless bloodline essence instantly filled Tianyang's primordial spirit senses. The entire top floor of the Crimson Dragon Pagoda was no longer in the same space as the Crimson Dragon Pagoda itself. Or rather, the location of the Crimson Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance was not in the Crimson Dragon Pagoda. It was just that the entrance happened to be in the Crimson Dragon Pagoda. This, Flood Dragon Blood, Heavenly Dragon Blood, True Dragon Blood, and even the Dragon Pearl of a peak revered dragon, and even the Dragon Sage Blood Essence, Tianyang's Dragon King body, under the stimulation of this seemingly endless power essence, was almost instantly released to the limit, and Tianyang also sensed all kinds of things in the countless bloodline essence. Perhaps compared to the hundreds of millions of years of accumulation of the Crimson Dragon clan, this dragon blood was nothing. However, to the 9 refined dragon body, which used dragon blood as the foundation to forge the dragon body, it had great value. This Crimson Dragon clan really knows the 9 refined dragon body. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up, looking at the countless dragon blood essence. His eyes released rays of light. This dragon blood was purer than any dragon blood he had ever seen. After all the dragon blood that Tianyang had seen was after death, and it might even carry endless resentment, so Tianyang did not dare to rashly absorb it. As for this dragon blood, it was automatically released by those true dragons who possessed great strength and reverence for the Scarlet Dragon Marshal Exalted. Not only did it not have any negative emotions, it was even purer than the dragon blood essence that was obtained after death. For the 9 refined dragon body, it was the best nourishment. I didn't expect that the Crimson Dragon clan would prepare such a great opportunity for me before the Dragon God assembly even began. Tianyang smiled slightly, and in the next moment, he took a step forward and stepped into the dragon blood pool in front of him that was hundreds of feet wide. Immediately, the dragon blood that was quietly spreading in the surroundings began to boil. 9 refined dragon body, condense. Tianyang sat cross-legged and shouted in a low voice. Countless dragon power seemed to turn into incomparably terrifying giant dragons, flying out of Tianyang's body. It devoured all the dragon blood essence in the surroundings. His body of the Dragon King, which had already reached great success, quickly reached the pinnacle at this moment. In terms of physical strength alone, Tianyang's current Dragon King body was superior to that of an ordinary sage-to-be. A single punch was enough to shatter space and pull down stars. The body of the Dragon King has reached its peak. Next is 9 refined dragon body, 7th refinement dragon emperor body. Tianyang smiled. The next moment, countless terrifying dragon blood essences surged toward Tianyang's limbs and bones. The 108 dragon emperor dragon runes emitted a brilliant glow as they absorbed the essence of the dragon blood that was surging into his body. In just a few breaths, the air that had been dyed red by the essence of the dragon blood instantly became clear and transparent. Even the lowest level flood dragon blood and true dragon blood had become the foundation of the Dragon Emperor's body. The Dragon Emperor dragon runes on Tianyang's skin were also constantly releasing rays of brilliant and powerful light. The light flickered, sometimes big and sometimes small. As the dragon blood essence poured in, it flickered violently. The next moment, boom, Tianyang's body exploded from the enormous amount of dragon blood essence. Countless drops of blood exploded in the air. Condense. Tianyang's primordial spirit smiled, and the countless pieces of flesh that had exploded returned once again. At the same time, it also devoured the dragon blood essence. 9 refined dragon body, refined dragon fire, Tianyang shouted. The next moment, the body that had just condensed once again burned with a blazing flame. This flame did not affect the air at all, but it directly ignited Tianyang's body. If the red dragon sage saw Tianyang's scene, his pupils would definitely shrink, and he would be extremely shocked. Compared to Tianyang's cultivation method and his identity as a human, he was simply a complete madman who would directly explode their own body and use the powerful primordial spirit to complete the reconstruction when tempering their body, who would directly summon a ball of flame and ignite themselves when tempering their body. Tianyang's cultivation method was something that even the red dragon race, with their extremely powerful bodies, could not withstand, let alone a human. Of course, the red dragon sage did not know that Tianyang had the immortal divine body. As long as his primordial spirit was still present, the immortal divine fire would slowly burn Tianyang's body back. But the red dragon sage also did not know that Tianyang had exploded his own body more than once before awakening his immortal divine bloodline. Boom, 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 boom. At the top of the red dragon pagoda, in the red dragon Wu Zun's inheritance space. Compared to the overflowing dragon blood essence at the beginning, after several days of refining, there was now less than a fifth of it left. This fifth was also the most important fifth. The dragon sage's blood and the peak Wu Zun's dragon pearl. At this moment, Tianyang's physical body was also extremely close to the body of the Dragon Emperor. What's left is a huge bone that's hard to chew. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. In the next instant, flames began to burn on his body. The 9 refined dragon bodies' dragon refining fire had already been replaced by the true flames of destruction. Now, Tianyang was using the true flames of destruction, a spiritual fire filled with destructive power, to ignite his body and temper the body of the Dragon Emperor. First, the dragon sage's blood essence, devour. Tianyang roared and formed a seal with both hands. The devouring heaven seal exploded. Terrifying vortexes formed, and in the next instant, a terrifying devouring power was released from the vortexes. The dragon sage's blood essence was forcefully devoured. Boom! Thunder seemed to explode in Tianyang's body. In the next instant, the dragon sage's blood essence began to rampage in Tianyang's body. After all, even these dragons were extremely respectful and sincere when they took the initiative to offer their blood essence and bloodline. However, spiritual beings had spirits. They were free from the control of their masters. In other words, they also had the instincts of spiritual beings, seeking benefits and avoiding harm. Being devoured by Tianyang was the greatest harm. However, there are only a few drops of blood left. Even if it's the dragon sage, what's the use? Tianyang smiled slightly. In the next instant, he formed a seal with both hands. The true flames of destruction burned fiercely, and the 9 refined dragon body continued to circulate. At the same time, the dragon pearl also turned into a powerful dragon force and poured into Tianyang's body. Countless dragon tattoos bloomed at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Tianyang's body was about to be devoured by this terrifying power. 9 refined dragon body, body of the Dragon Emperor. Condense. Tianyang suddenly roared. His roar was like a law that followed his words. At this moment, the incomparably chaotic dragon strength and dragon blood that was on the verge of bursting Heavenly Sun's body began to circulate through a strange meridian. Tianyang's body was also rapidly strengthening at this moment. After a few breaths, it ushered in a qualitative leap. Chapter 1167. Body of the Dragon Emperor. Majestic and powerful dragon power circled Tianyang's body rapidly. Even though the space of Red Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance was extremely stable, it was still cracked by this terrifying physical strength. It was as if this space was no longer enough to accommodate Tianyang's powerful physical body. This body of the Dragon Emperor is still lacking something. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly raised his eyebrows and sighed. It's not that easy to become a Dragon Emperor. The current body of the Dragon Emperor has a spirit, but not a spirit. This spirit has only been activated halfway. It can only be said to be the embryonic form of the body of the Dragon Emperor. Tianyang muttered to himself. Tianyang was very clear about his own physical body. Red Dragon Wu Zun did not leave anything behind after the 6th refinement of the 9 refined dragon body. Even though Red Dragon Wu Zun had ascended to the Xintian Great Cosmos, he had cultivated to the half-saint realm. Even so, he had only cultivated to the 7th refinement of a 9 refined dragon body. This 7th refinement was completely different from Tianyang's. Of course, Red Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance also contained the complete version of a 9 refined dragon body. Unfortunately, it was poles apart from Tianyang's. If Tianyang forcefully cultivated according to Red Dragon Wu Zun's path, most of his powerful physical strength would be crippled. However, the current embryonic form of the body of the Dragon Emperor is much stronger than the previous body of the Dragon King. Tianyang chuckled and did not care about the remaining distance of 1.5 steps. Since he could cultivate the embryonic form, it proved that Tianyang's path did not have any problems. This meant that sooner or later, this embryonic form would transform into the true body of the Dragon Emperor. Now, with the embryonic form of the body of the Dragon Emperor, Tianyang could directly destroy the entire Dragon Gods Conference. Even my true Yuan has broken through to the peak of Wu Zun's 7th realm. It's a pity that the Dragon Gods Conference is just a few days away, and I can't focus on breaking through. Otherwise, stepping into Wu Zun's 8th realm shouldn't be a problem. Tianyang circulated the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art and felt the true Yuan aura in his body that was much stronger than it was a few days ago. He was a little surprised. The help that the succession of the Crimson Dragon Martial Highness realm had given him was far greater than he had imagined. It's just that this place is completely. Heavenly Sun turned around and looked at the place where the dragon blood essence had turned into mist and all kinds of Dragon Clan treasures were piled up. The dragon's blood's blood dragon as dragon god. Dragon blood dragon's blood had the dragon's blood had dragon blood dragon's blood dragon's blood. Dragon's S Dragon's Wu and Dragon S of the Dragon S. Since he had already obtained the Red Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance, he could not embarrass the Red Dragon Wu Zun in the upcoming Dragon Gods Conference. At the very least, he had to destroy the Heavenly Dragon Clan, like how the Red Dragon Wu Zun led the Red Dragon Clan to destroy the Heavenly Dragon Clan and establish their position in the True Dragon Sacred World hundreds of millions of years ago. If the current Tianyang were to encounter the Heavenly Dragon Saint again, even if he could not defeat him, he would definitely not be in such a sorry state like before. At that time, the Heavenly Dragon Saint was high and mighty, looking down on the common people. With a flip of his hand, he could control Tianyang's life and death. Tianyang still remembered that humiliation. Also, Xin Yuan Kong's high and mighty attitude of looking down on the world. Even if Tianyang defeated him, he could still take advantage of the situation and ridicule him crazily. Tianyang also remembered it clearly. Ever since Tianyang learned how to cultivate from the garbage dump, he had never been some kind of Mother Mary with the heart of a Buddha. Although Tianyang did not seek revenge for the smallest grievance often, it did not mean that he would not do it. Wu Zun is at the peak of the 7th heaven realm. In your physical body, With a creak, the door opened. The Red Dragon Saint, who had been waiting at the door for a while, instantly sensed the changes in Tianyang's body. His pupils shrank, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Wu Zun was at the peak of the seventh heaven realm. If Tianyang could not even break through half a realm after receiving the Red Dragon Wu Zun's inheritance, then it could only mean that Tianyang was a good-for-nothing. But what was going on with his physical body? The Red Dragon Saint stared fixedly at Tianyang's physical body. Tianyang was not wearing any treasures now. With the cultivation of a great saint, the Red Dragon Saint could naturally see the state of Tianyang's physical body. But it was precisely because he could see that the Red Dragon Saint was so shocked. This was simply too strong. As a human, Tianyang did not notice it, but the Red Dragon Saint could. Not only did Tianyang have the aura of a dragon, but there was also a true dragon roaring ferociously behind Tianyang. Even the Crimson Dragon Sage, a great sage, could feel the terrifying pressure emanating from it. Looks like this kid has more than one secret. The Red Dragon Saint looked at Tianyang and sighed in his heart. Then, he turned his head and looked in the direction of Sky Dragon City. The corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. The Dragon God Assembly is coming soon. I wonder how the Sky Dragon Saint and the people from the Xianyuan family will react when they see this, the Red Dragon Saint chuckled. At this time, Tianyang spoke. How long is it until the Dragon God Assembly? Half a day. Brother Xianyuan, have you recovered? In Sky Dragon City, Bai Pingyu looked with concern at the handsome man who was clutching his chest with a trace of resentment. His handsome face became incomparably ferocious and terrifying because of this expression. Recovered? My chest was pierced. How can I recover so quickly? Xianyuan Kong growled, his face filled with rage and resentment. That little bastard was so insidious and left a spiritual fire behind. It took me half a week just to expel the spiritual fire. In the remaining half a week, I barely managed to heal my wounds. Now, it's not bad that I can unleash the power of Wu Zun, a first saint. Xianyuan Kong roared. He was Xianyuan Kong of the Xianyuan family. He was about to step into the dual saint stage and was an extremely rare figure in the entire Xiantian great world. In the end, he was severely injured in the true dragon's sacred domain, which was far inferior to the Xianyuan family. He had less than 70% of his strength left. Such hatred was monstrous. Then, the Dragon God Assembly is about to begin. What if we meet that Tianyang? Hearing this, Bai Pingyu's expression changed. Before Xianyuan Kong could recover, he had been severely injured by Tianyang. Now, Tianyang did not know what was going on, but with the help of the Red Dragon Saint, that injury that was not serious should have been healed. And Xianyuan Kong was still lacking. The gap between the two sides had widened again. Hearing this, Xianyuan Kong's lips curled into a strange smile. His throat moved as he let out a low laugh. So what if I haven't recovered? There is only one outcome for those who dare to offend the Xianyuan family. That is death. Hearing this, Bai Pingyu could not help but gasp. Chapter 1168. At the center of the true dragon sacred domain. Today was the day of the Dragon God's Assembly. This place had become the grandest place in the true dragon sacred domain. Countless giant dragons soared into the sky from every corner of the true dragon sacred domain and flew towards the center of the true dragon sacred domain. The Dragon God's Assembly was not only a grand event for body cultivators, but also a celebration for the dragon tribe. Giant dragons flashed and covered the sky. Countless true dragons stepped out of their caves, lairs, and cities that they had not stepped out of for a long time. In an instant, dragons gathered. Thousands of dragons bowed to each other. Is this the Dragon God's Assembly? Tianyang looked around at the sky that was filled with giant dragons. He could not help but smack his lips and exclaim. If the people of the Xintian great world saw this scene, they would be dumbfounded. The dragon tribe was a rare tribe. Sometimes, one might not even be able to find one even after traveling thousands of mountains and rivers. At this moment, there were tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of true dragons flying towards the same place. Tianyong also saw a few thin figures among the true dragons. They must be the holders of the Dragon God token invited by the Dragon God's Assembly this time. The Dragon God's Assembly is actually a grand event for the Dragon Tribe. However, the human tribe also contributed a lot to the establishment of the true dragon's sacred domain. That's why the human tribe is allowed to participate. The Red Dragon Saint smiled. Tianyong nodded slightly. Otherwise, it would be strange if a xenophobic tribe like the Dragon Tribe allowed other tribes to participate in their grand event. Then I'll go first, the Red Dragon Saint said, and sped up towards the center of the true dragon sacred domain. He was the only great saint existence in the true dragon's sacred domain and the leader of the Crimson Dragon clan, who was also the leader of the Dragon God's Assembly, so he naturally couldn't be slow in attending such a grand event. On the other side, Tianyong did not notice that among the true dragons, there were sinister gazes directed at the leisurely Tianyong. The Red Dragon Saint can't always look after his son. Humph! Without the protection of the Red Dragon Saint, how can a bastard from another world be my match? Next, let's show this guy what true strength is. Xianyuan Kong smiled ferociously. Then, he stepped onto Bai Pengyu and flew towards the center of the real dragon sacred world. At the center of the true dragon sacred world, the Dragon God Guild, Tianyong landed slowly and took a look at the plaza that had witnessed the changes of the true dragon sacred world for countless years. Rather than calling it a square, it would be more accurate to call it a plain that was specially open for the Dragon God faction. The square had a circumference of a few thousand li. Even if hundreds of thousands of true dragons were to transform into their physical forms, it would still be more than enough. The rules of the Dragon God Assembly are different every time. However, there's one thing that will never change. At this moment, Qi Ingtian chuckled and said, "That is to fight. No matter how we worship the Dragon God this time, or what the situation is, we still have to fight in the end." It is said that this time, the Dragon Saint Elder Assembly has even decided to open the 10,000 Dragon Steel. If you can enter the 10,000 Dragon Steel to take a look, then your strength will definitely increase countless times. At that time, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Dragon Saint won't be able to hurt you. Qi Ingtian laughed. Hearing this, Tianyong nodded slightly. When Tianyong obtained the purple gold Dragon God token from the little golden girl, he had no idea what the Dragon God Assembly was. Along the way, Tianyong also learned a lot. So, big brother, you don't have to do anything. Just get ready to beat up that idiot from the Xianyuan family. Qi Ingtian laughed. Hearing this, Tianyong shrugged, indicating that he did not agree or disagree. Tianyong naturally had to deal with Xianyuan Kong, but obviously not now. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out along with a loud bang. On the entire plain, the gigantic dragons that were laughing and chatting just a moment ago actually prostrated themselves on the ground, as if they were under some kind of great suppression. Waves of aura that seemed to surpass the heavens, and the earth burst out. Even some of the humans were suppressed and had to kneel on one knee on the ground. In an instant, there were hundreds of thousands of giant dragons and hundreds of humans. Only a few people could maintain their original posture. My father is here. Qi Ingtian waved his hand vigorously, revealing a trace of excitement. Hearing this, Tianyong immediately understood. No wonder the aura was so powerful. He sensed that some of the peak Wu Zun and even the half-saints were prostrating themselves on the ground. It turned out that it was the aura of a supreme sage. In the next moment, in the sky, a crimson dragon claw broke through the clouds and reached out. In the next moment, a five-clawed true dragon that was thousands of feet long and covered in burning scales flew out. The moment this five-clawed crimson dragon appeared, the aura that covered the entire area suddenly retracted. However, before everyone could stand up, another wave of sage aura was released. This time, the dragon that broke through the clouds was a sea dragon that was blue all over. Even the dragon's dragon eyes were shining with sparkling blue light. The sea dragon saint. Next was the earth dragon saint, who was yellow all over but still had the cultivation of a sage. Finally, it was the Sky Dragon Saint, who had a grudge against Tianyang and was the most senior of the 4 dragon saints. The 4 dragon saints of the true dragon sacred world had gathered. Now that the 4 dragon saints had appeared, the sage aura that pressed down on everyone had dissipated into nothingness. However, not many people dared to stand. Even the humans and dragons that could resist the aura from before were now kneeling on one knee and respectfully greeting the 4 dragon saints. Even Xianyuan Kong bowed slightly. In the face of 4 saints, one of whom was a supreme sage, even Xianyuan Kong, who was from a Xianyuan family, had to be respectful. After all, although he had an extraordinary background, he was only a small pinnacle Wuzun. There was only hope for him to break through to the sage realm. In front of a true powerhouse, he could only lower his proud head. Even by Pengyu, the yellow dragon, and the prodigies of the Sea Dragon clan bowed at this moment. Suddenly, in the center of the hundreds of thousands of dragons on the plain, only Tianyang and Qi Yingtian were still standing straight. The blue sea dragon saint immediately noticed Tianyang and Qi Yingtian. He looked at the fearless Qi Yingtian and chuckled. It's the Crimson Dragon Saint's kid again. This guy's grown up. I can't control him. The Crimson Dragon Saint chuckled. At this moment, the Sky Dragon Saint's face turned cold when he saw the Sea Dragon Saint's nonchalant attitude. If the Sea Dragon Saint was unhappy, then he could use this as an excuse to kick Tianyang out. Even the purple gold dragon god, Token, wouldn't be able to do anything. After all, the Sea Dragon Saint was the strongest person in the true dragon sacred world other than the Crimson Dragon Saint. But now, this plan could only fall through. At this moment, the Sea Dragon Saint waved his hand, and a gentle wave of energy caused countless dragons and humans to stand up straight. In the next moment, the Crimson Dragon Saint's voice resounded throughout the true dragon sacred world. The Dragon God assembly begins. Instantly, hundreds of thousands of dragons roared at the sky. Chapter 11:69. The Dragon God assembly had begun. In just an instant, terrifying and powerful auras were released from the bodies of countless dragons. Even the weakest young dragon had the aura of a peak sea of soul realm expert. 10,000 dragons as the signal, the sacred dragon as the guide. The divine dragon descends. At this moment, the Red Dragon Saint roared and formed a seal with both hands. The power of a great saint of the dragon clan erupted. On the side, the Sky Dragon Saint, Sea Dragon Saint, and Earth Dragon Saint all had solemn expressions as they erupted with an incomparably powerful light. This is the Dragon Summoning God. The Dragon Summoning God is almost the most important part of the Dragon God assembly. On the side, Qi Yingtian said excitedly as he looked at the Dragon God aura slowly emanating from the great formation formed by the 4 dragon saints. Even Tianyang, who didn't have the slightest bit of Dragon Clan bloodline, could feel the powerful fluctuations that made one's heart palpitate. Saint Emperor? Close, but far from it. Tianyang had seen the power of the 9-universe Saint Emperor in the Heaven's Expanse Temple, in the 9-universe map, and in the 9-universe sky ruins more than once. His means were indeed heaven-defying, but it was still more powerful than Tianyang could imagine. However, this dragon god aura, no matter how Tianyang imagined and simulated it, he couldn't figure out what level of existence this was. It was just like when Tianyang first came into contact with the All-Heaven Sword and felt the power of Wuzun's realm. That was a pressure that surpassed this world's pressure. This dragon god actually came from another world, and it's even stronger than the great black sky world. Tianyang muttered to himself. At this moment, the aura emanating from the great formation suddenly changed. The Red Dragon Saint's face was solemn as he formed a seal with both hands. A ball of blazing dragon flames erupted. Dragon flames fill the sky. Dragon swallows the world. The Red Dragon Saint roared, and the huge 5-clawed red dragon's body suddenly burned with balls of flames. The aura of the dragon god summoned by the array also changed abruptly. If the previous aura of the dragon god was just a god that had transcended this world and looked down on the world, now, under the transformation of this strange formation, the dragon god's aura had turned into a spring rain that nourished all living things. It landed on the plains. Tianyang immediately understood why the hundreds of thousands of giant dragons in the true dragon sacred world had all come out at the same time. This was a blessing that surpassed the level of the great black sky world. Which idiot would ignore this good fortune and continue to cultivate in seclusion without knowing if it would be useful? The aura of the dragon god was extremely faint, but its level was incomparably high. Even though it had turned into a spring rain that covered an area of thousands of miles, it still carried an incomparably strong power of good fortune. However, only now did the humans realize why these true dragons, regardless of whether they liked it or not, had all enlarged their bodies to the extreme at this moment. This group of true dragons was snatching blessings. Immediately, the eyes of many humans turned red. What was this? This was an opportunity, an incomparably powerful opportunity. Perhaps they didn't know that this was an opportunity that surpassed the level of the great black sky world, but they could still feel the power of the dragon god's aura. How could it be snatched away? The blessings have already descended. It's best not to act rashly. At this moment, the earth dragon sage, who had been silent all this time, spoke with a solemn expression and an imposing manner. Hearing this, the human half-saint who had just attacked immediately withered. A sage, one of the 4 great dragon sages of the true dragon sacred world, had spoken. What else could a half-saint like him do? The other human cultivators who wanted to use their giant abilities could only hold back and accept the baptism of the dragon god's blessing with regret. This dragon god's blessing is indeed extraordinary. A drop of rainwater fell on Tianyang's palm. In an instant, the rainwater entered Tianyang's body and became a part of Tianyang's power. As for Tianyang, he could clearly sense the instant the rainwater that carried the aura of the dragon god entered his body. The body of the dragon king, no, the embryonic form of the dragon emperor, was instantly strengthened countless times. It was as if he had received an all-rounding supplement. This dragon god's aura actually has such an effect on the embryonic form of the dragon emperor. Tianyang was shocked. He felt the aura in his body skyrocket and the corners of his mouth curled up. Then, don't blame me, giant? Snatch it? Tianyang wasn't stupid enough to find trouble with the Earth Dragon Sage and the Sea Dragon Sage after offending the Heaven Dragon Sage. However, who told you that you could only snatch it if you wanted to get more blessings? Vast expanse 9 changes vault of heaven change. Tianyang shouted in a low voice. In an instant, countless afterimages appeared and his body shuttled through the gaps. As time passed, Tianyang's control of the vast expanse 9 changes became more and more profound. His cultivation of the vast expanse Tao also became stronger. Now, it was comparable to the level of a half-saint. At this moment, he used the vast expanse 9 changes. It was as if Tianyang appeared in dozens of different places in an instant. Some of the dragon god's blessings that had never landed on any living beings were unceremoniously taken by Tianyang. This human kid is quite interesting. At the top, the sea dragon sage who was also silently receiving the dragon god's blessings looked at this scene and revealed a surprised smile. Tianyang's way of thinking was unique even though the dragon god gathering had been held countless times. Looks like this kid is going to be the biggest winner of the dragon god's blessings this time. The red dragon sage laughed. At the side, the heaven dragon sage looked at Tianyang, who was constantly shuttling and receiving the dragon god's blessings. He was so angry that he began to grind his teeth. This kid, he actually dared to be so arrogant in front of him. He didn't put him in his eyes at all. As for Xinyuan Kong, he also noticed Tianyang. However, he could only stand on the spot and watch Tianyang receive the dragon god's blessings at an extremely strange and terrifying speed. He could only stand on the spot and sulk. He was not as fast as Tianyang, who had cultivated the vast expanse 9 changes and the vast expanse path. If he was like Tianyang, he would not only not get here, but also lose it. How can this guy be so fast? Xinyuan Kong's eyes were almost spitting fire as he looked at Tianyang with hatred and jealousy. He could not wait to attack and tear Tianyang into pieces. This was a method that most people could think of. However, without the support of speed, they might not be able to do it even if they thought of it. As for Tianyang, he was the only one who could do it. Although the dragon god's aura was strong, it was still limited. After a while, the dragon god's blessings slowly disappeared. Countless giant dragons' faces were filled with joy. This time, the dragon god's blessings had almost raised the physical bodies of all the giant dragons in the true dragon sacred world by half a grade. As for Tianyang, he stopped and sensed for a moment. The embryonic form of the dragon emperor's body was much stronger than before. It was more than twice as strong. Xinyuan Kong shot a venomous glare at Tianyang, who was also incomparably delighted. A sinister glint flashed across his eyes. Just you wait. I'll make you spit out everything you've eaten. Next is Chapter 1170, The Cloud Sky Arena. As the Scarlet Dragon's sage spoke, the entire plain fell silent. Then it was as if a bomb had been detonated under the water. In an instant, it set off waves after waves of terrifying waves. The Cloud Sky Arena. Tianyang was stunned when he heard this unfamiliar term. What was that? However, Qi Yingtian's expression changed slightly. Why is the Cloud Sky Arena held so early this time? Qi Yingtian asked when he realized that Tianyang didn't know what the Cloud Sky Arena was. It's normal that Big Brother doesn't know. The Cloud Sky Arena is an ordinary event compared to the Dragon God's Assembly. Cultivators below the half-step Saint Realm can enter the Cloud Sky Arena. If they can stand out, they might be able to obtain the treasures of the true dragon, sacred domain. However, the Cloud Sky Arena is usually held at the end of the Dragon God's Assembly. Why is it held so early this time? Qi Yingtian's eyes narrowed as he thought of a possibility, and the next words of the Crimson Dragon sage confirmed his thoughts. The top 5 cultivators in the Cloud Sky Arena will be able to enter the myriad dragon steel once. The entire plain was in an uproar. Countless half-step saints from the dragon and human race beat their chests and stomped their feet. They wished they were born a few hundred years later so that they could participate in the Cloud Sky Arena. As for those saints, they couldn't help but be slightly moved. This time, it was actually the 10,000 dragon steel. Bai Pingyu, Huang Long, Xinyuan Kong, Qi Yingtian, and the other geniuses were shocked. The myriad dragon steel. This time, even Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He knew what the myriad dragon steel represented. The myriad dragon steel was a steel made of ordinary materials. It wasn't a treasure or a weapon. However, the 10,000 dragon steel had been in the core of the true dragon sacred world since it was first created. It had permeated the true dragon sacred domain with the power of countless dragon saints, great saints, and even the dragon saint emperor. Countless dragon race experts had carved their Saint Dao insights on the myriad dragon steel. For cultivators who hadn't broken through to the Saint Dao, it was an unparalleled cultivation ground. So the myriad dragon steel just happened to open. No wonder. After Xinyuan Kong was slightly startled, he let out a gloomy smile and revealed a look of determination to win. He was a genius from the Xinyuan family. He was about to break through to the dual Saint Dao. If he could cultivate for a week in the myriad dragon steel, he had a 70% chance of breaking through to the dual Saint Dao. If he cultivated for a month, he would be able to break through to the third Saint Dao. As for more, that was impossible. Every time the 10,000 dragon steel opened, it would only last for a month. Who would have thought a place as precious as the 10,000 dragon steel would appear here? Among the crowd, a young man in a black robe smiled strangely. A huge golden dragon instantly transformed into a human. Its face was rough, but the aura it exuded was not to be underestimated. A peak martial saint, like Xinyuan Kong, was close to the dual Saint Dao. At the same time, countless dragons also turned into human forms. Each of them had the aura of a peak martial highness. Of the hundreds of humans participating, Less than 1/20th of them were Wuzun. There were already a few hundred peak Martial Highness Realm dragons. Raise the arena. At this moment, the Crimson Dragon Sage waved his hand, and pieces of incomparably solid ground appeared out of nowhere. They connected and fused together in midair, forming a huge arena. Chi Ingtian couldn't hold back anymore and charged up. "Which piece of trash wants to fight me?" Chi Ingtian said arrogantly. He swept his gaze over the countless peak martial saints who had ascended the cloud sky battle ring and laughed loudly. "Peak Wuzun, Saint Dao power." Looking at Chi Ingtian, the dragons and the crowd all showed a trace of fear on their faces. They had all heard of Chi Ingtian's great name. He was the son of Red Dragon's saint, the strongest genius of a younger generation in the true dragon's sacred domain. They didn't want to fight him. The rules of the Cloud Sky Arena are the same as usual. If you defeat your opponent, you can expel them. When there are 5 people left, it will be the end of the Cloud Sky Arena. It will also be the day the 10,000 Dragon Steel opens. Red Dragon's saint said. Many cultivators who were participating in the Cloud Sky Arena for the first time were stunned. This Cloud Sky Arena wasn't a one-on-one battle. Instead, it was a chaotic battle. If that was the case, it would be much more tragic than a one-on-one battle. Immediately, countless dragons began to have the intention to retreat and leave. Red Dragon's saint glanced at the dragons who were retreating and sighed. These dragons would probably never be able to break through to the half-step saint realm. The opportunity to become a saint was extremely rare. This was just an arena, and they could use the 10,000 dragon steel to cultivate. These dragons still wanted to retreat. Unless a pie fell from the sky, it would be difficult for them to become a saint. However, while some people left, there were also people who participated. Previously, only a portion of the peak Wuzun dragons had joined. Now, the entire dragon race, including hundreds of peak Revere dragons, had entered the arena. Seeing this, Red Dragon's saint smiled in satisfaction and waved his hand. "Now, let the Cloud Sky Arena begin." Boom! In an instant, a loud bang exploded in the Cloud Sky Arena. 2 incomparably huge human-shaped Tyrannosauruses that had even exceeded the limits of humans collided. The aura of peak Wuzun erupted. In the next moment, by Pengyu, Chi Ingtian, and the others also made their moves. Since there were only 5 people left, it would end. Then, from the beginning, they naturally had to take advantage of the fact that no one had fully reacted. Kill them all. At the same time, there were also those who were easy to bully. The rewards of the Cloud Sky Arena couldn't be only one. If one performed well, they would also be rewarded by the clan. As a result, as one of the few humans on the Cloud Sky Arena, regardless of whether it was the human race or the dragon race, Wuzun was at the peak of the 7th level of the realm. Several people immediately surrounded Tianyang. Wuzun is at the peak of the 7th level of the realm. With this cultivation, you're worthy of participating in the Dragon God Conference? A handsome man with a tall and straight figure glanced at Tianyang in disdain and mocked. At the side, a woman wearing the same clothes as the handsome man, but with heavy makeup, glanced at Tianyang in disdain and giggled. "Little brother, we will make things difficult for you. We are disciples of the Cloud Dragon Palace. If you don't want to be hurt, it's better. Hand over the treasure and leave." The woman with heavy makeup revealed a sinister smile as she spoke. In the next moment, the woman with heavy makeup, the handsome man, and another person from the same sect formed a triangle and surrounded Tianyang. Seeing this, Tianyang couldn't help but shake his head. He didn't expect that the first to deal with him wasn't the dragon race, but the human race. Cloud Dragon Palace, is it? Chapter 1171. Why are all of you here to seek death? Tianyang shook his head regretfully and said. The 3 disciples of Cloud Dragon Palace were stunned when they heard this. Then, their faces turned furious. Seeking death. There was actually a small cultivator at the peak of Wuzun Stage 7 who dared to say that he was seeking death to the 3 of them who were at the peak of Wuzun Stage and 2 disciples who had cultivated the Holy Path. You're the one who's seeking death. The woman with heavy makeup shouted angrily. A folding fan suddenly appeared in her hand, and she opened it. The true yuan of the peak Wuzun stage merged with a strange poison power and turned into streaks of blood-red flowing light that charged toward Tianyang. Who would have thought that a mere peak Wuzun stage 7 would dare to be so arrogant in front of us? At this moment, the handsome man snorted coldly. His body flashed, and he slammed his palm toward Tianyang's head. The other man's expression did not change. Light flashed in his hand, and he turned his right arm into a huge dragon claw. Die! In just an instant, the three peak Wuzun stage attacks arrived at the same time. The three of them were indeed from the same sect. Their teamwork was not weak at all. Even though Tianyang's words had angered them, they still maintained their teamwork. The palm of the handsome man, the fan of the woman with heavy makeup, and the dragon claw of the other man each had their own roles and each controlled an area of attack. They trapped Tianyang in a small corner. At this moment, Tianyang's lips curled into a mocking smile. Vast expanse, 9 changes, vault of heaven change. Tianyang murmured and activated the vast expanse Tao. The vast expanse Tao that was infinitely close to the holy path merged into the vast expanse 9 changes. Instantly, the speed of the vast expanse 9 changes was maximized. Whoosh! Tianyang's body disappeared from a spot. After a full 0.3 seconds, the attacks of the three people finally arrived. Falling flower fan, thunder dragon roaring palm, dragon transformation. The three of them roared. The peak Wuzun stage 7 released his true yuan and slammed it toward the spot where Tianyang was. In their eyes, Tianyang had been hit by them, and they did not know if he was alive or dead. However, after they slammed their attacks, they felt that something was wrong. Why does it feel like I don't feel? The handsome man was stunned. He raised his hand, and powerful thunderbolts revolved around his hand. However, this Laming was supposed to explode. Where did the target of the explosion go? At this moment, the other man suddenly let out a miserable shriek. On the right arm of the dragon that had transformed into a dragon claw, there were streams of blood-red light embedded into it. It had already pierced through the dragon claw's sturdy defense and arrived at its flesh. The terrifying poison on the falling flower fan had also taken effect on the other man. The other man's face suddenly turned pale and ugly, and the woman with heavy makeup was scared silly. What was going on? Didn't the falling flower fan already lock onto that guy? How did he hit his fellow sect member? Interesting. Tianyang chuckled and said, "You tricked us." The handsome man roared ferociously. No matter how stupid the handsome man was, he knew that Tianyang was behind all this. In the next moment, the handsome man leaped into the air and exploded with the terrifying speed of a peak martial honorable. His palm, which was still controlling wind and thunder, smashed fiercely toward Tianyang. This was the difference between him and the other disciples. The thunder-roaring divine path that he cultivated had already surpassed the initial saint stage. Even if he controlled it with his palm, he would not lose control. The poison Tao of the woman with heavy makeup was obviously not very advanced. That was why she accidentally injured the other man. "How dare you humiliate my cloud dragon palace? You go to hell." The handsome man roared and threw out a punch. Instantly, a giant dragon roared out from the handsome man's hand. It was surrounded by lightning and charged toward Tianyang. This cloud dragon palace is quite interesting. At this moment, Tianyang looked at the giant lightning dragon that was bearing its fangs and charging toward him with the power of the divine path. He was shocked. It was difficult for an ordinary force or even a sage sect to integrate the divine path into a martial technique so thoroughly. This action had increased the power of the martial technique by several folds. It had increased the power of an upper-grade heaven-level martial technique to the holy martial level. Dragon Emperor Divine Fist. However, Tianyang smiled and punched. He used the Dragon Emperor Divine Fist with the embryonic form of the Dragon Emperor's body. Although the Dragon Emperor of Tianshao, Great World's Dragon Emperor Mausoleum, was called the Dragon Emperor, he was only around the level of Wuzun. The Dragon Emperor Divine Fist that he created was not too strong. However, after Tianyang cultivated it, he had modified and strengthened it countless times. At this moment, the Dragon Emperor Divine Fist was still using the power of the Dragon Emperor. However, Tianyang had simplified the process and was much more direct. He punched out with the power of the Dragon Emperor's body. The Dragon Emperor's power of the embryonic form of the Dragon Emperor was not much weaker than that of a true half-saint dragon tribe member. Boom! A fist print shot out and let out a shocking dragon roar. It collided with the Thunder Dragon's roar palm. Hiss! The moment the Dragon Emperor Divine Fist collided with the giant lightning dragon formed by the Thunder Dragon's roar palm, the giant lightning dragon let out a mournful cry. The next moment, it was smashed into pieces. The remaining Dragon Emperor Divine Fist was still extremely powerful as it charged toward the handsome man. What's going on? The handsome man's face was pale as he looked at the scene in disbelief. The Thunder Dragon's roar palm was created by a living sage of the Cloud Dragon Palace. It was an extremely powerful holy martial skill. Even some of the half-saints in the Cloud Dragon Palace would not dare to say that they could easily take this move. After all, he was Wu Zun, who had cultivated a holy martial skill to the peak. However, why? The Thunder Dragon's roar palm, which even half-saints did not dare to underestimate, was broken by this little Wu Zun, who was at the peak of LV7. Even after it was broken, the remaining power was still enough to make his expression change. Damn it! The handsome man roared. He formed a seal with both hands and punched out again. Thunder Dragon's roar palm. The majestic power of the Thunder Dragon's roar palm gathered crazily on the seal. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying seal shot out. It was the same as the Thunder Dragon's roar palm, but it was even more powerful. This was a true holy martial skill. It was in the holy martial skill realm. Where does this person come from? Why does he have such combat power when he is only at the peak of LV7? The handsome man was shocked. In the next moment, the Dragon Emperor's Divine Fist and the Thunder God's Thunderbolt Seal collided violently. Boom! Ripples appeared in the space. The unstoppable momentum of the Dragon Emperor Divine Fist was also restrained. Phew! The handsome man heaved a sigh of relief. In the next moment, a dragon roar sounded from the Dragon Emperor Divine Fist. The dazzling dragon power bloomed. What? The handsome man's face changed drastically. He wanted to attack again to block Tianyang's move, but he was powerless. He could only be hit in the chest by this seal, and he was severely injured. Blood spurted from his mouth, and he was sent flying out of the cloud sky arena. Tianyang casually pointed at the two people beside him, and they turned into two streams of light that heavily injured them and sent them flying out of the cloud sky arena. Chapter 1172. A handsome man, a woman with heavy makeup, and another peak-level Wu Zun from the Cloud Dragon Palace. In less than 5 minutes, they were all eliminated at the same time. They became the first person to be eliminated in the Cloud Sky Arena, as well as the first force to be completely eliminated. Who is this person? Tianyang's performance surprised even the Earth Dragon Saint, who did not care about this unfamiliar human youth. The Dragon Clan had 4 great Dragon Saints. Other than the Crimson Dragon Saint and the Sky Dragon Saint, the remaining Ocean Dragon Saint and Earth Dragon Saint were both extremely close to the Great Saint Realm. The aura on Tianyang's body was naturally seen clearly by them, but it was because of this that they were so surprised. Wu Zun is at the peak of the 7th level realm, but he defeated 3 peak-level Wu Zun without any pressure, and 2 of them are peak-level Wu Zun geniuses with only 1 saint path. The Earth Dragon Saint said, in surprise. Even though he had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, he had never seen such a thing. The gap between peak-level Wu Zun and peak-level 7th level Wu Zun was huge. It was even bigger than the gap between Wu Zun's 1st level and Wu Zun's 7th level. Against a peak-level 7th level Wu Zun, any peak-level Wu Zun who was at the peak of the 9th level could easily kill him. Moreover, there were 2 people from the Cloud Dragon Palace who had mastered 1 saint path. In the end, it was useless. In front of Tianyang, The three people from the Cloud Dragon Palace were not strong opponents who could crush Tianyang in terms of cultivation. They were like clowns who could not even be considered a match. From the beginning to the end, Tianyang had been very casual, but he could still suppress them like this. These three people underestimated their opponent too much. However, this is not the main reason for their failure. The Earth Dragon Saint analyzed and said, using 3 peak Wuzun cultivators to deal with 1 peak 7th level Wuzun cultivator, no matter who it was, they would inevitably underestimate their opponent. However, the handsome man from the Cloud Dragon Palace was not stupid. Although he had underestimated Tianyang at the beginning, he immediately unleashed a series of powerful attacks when he sensed Tianyang's terrifying strength. Even the Scarlet Dragon Crown Prince, Qi Yingtan, who is currently in the limelight in the True Dragon Sacred Domain, would not be able to easily deal with such an attack. However, Tianyang destroyed all of their resistance with just one punch. It was as if Tianyang was Wuzun who had grasped the pinnacle of the Saint Dao, and they were the tiny Wuzun at the pinnacle of the 7th level. They lost because of their strength. They lost because of their absolute strength. The Red Dragon Saint chuckled. Hearing this, the Earth Dragon Saint nodded slightly, but confusion still flickered in its large yellow eyes. How could Wuzun at the pinnacle of the 7th level possess such strength? This guy has cultivated the 9 refined dragon body to the 7th refinement. Perhaps he is about to reach the 7th refinement. Besides, I can feel that this little guy's 9-tempered dragon flesh is a lot stronger than the Scarlet Dragon Martial Highness. The Red Dragon Saint said, not only the Earth Dragon Saint, but even the Sea Dragon Saint and the Heaven Dragon Saint, who had a grudge against Tianyang, narrowed their eyes. The Scarlet Dragon Martial Saint was a member of the Scarlet Dragon clan. The 9 refined dragon body was widely spread within the Scarlet Dragon clan. However, it did not have much relation with the Sea Dragon clan, Heavenly Dragon clan, and Earth Dragon clan. They did not know how powerful the 9 refined dragon body was. However, the Red Dragon Saint could only use one sentence to describe it. The 7th refinement of a 9 refined dragon body is recorded in the records that Wuzun, the Red Dragon, reached this realm when he was a half-saint. With his physical body, he could fight against a sage for 300 moves without being defeated. Tianyang's 7th refinement of the 9 refined dragon body is more powerful than Wuzun's. In fact, it is more than twice as powerful. The Red Dragon Saint said. In the next instant, the Sea Dragon Saint and the Earth Dragon Saint exclaimed in shock, while the Heaven Dragon Saint's face darkened. Wuzun the Red Dragon was able to fight against a sage with the 7th refinement. Tianyang had cultivated the 7th refinement, which was even more powerful than Wuzun's. If he succeeded, wouldn't that mean that he could fight against a sage? Then the Heaven Dragon Saint would be in danger. This guy cannot be allowed to live. The Heavenly Dragon Saint lowered his head. His dragon eyes flickered with a dangerous light. The people from the Cloud Dragon Palace are all dead. At this moment, the disappearance of the people from the Cloud Dragon Palace attracted the attention of countless people. The Cloud Dragon Palace was a huge force in the West Spirit State. It was a sage's sect. Originally, the Cloud Dragon Saint of the Cloud Dragon Palace had come to the True Dragon Sacred Domain to participate in the Dragon Gods Conference. However, the Cloud Dragon Palace was suddenly attacked by external enemies. That was why the disciples of the 3 sects had come. However, the 3 of them were also the top talents of the Cloud Dragon Palace. In less than 5 minutes, they had all been killed. Wuzun the peak of the 7th heaven realm. In the next instant, the crowd noticed that Tianyang was slowly retracting his aura. The countless human sky prides who had been wondering if Tianyang was powerful and whether they should avoid him changed their expressions. A greedy look appeared on his face. Wuzun the peak of the 7th heaven realm could defeat 3 Wuzun the peak of the 9th heaven realm. 2 of them had even mastered the sage path. This meant that Wuzun the peak of the 7th heaven realm must have an extremely powerful treasure. They would never admit that they were weaker than the Cloud Dragon Palace. Kit, Tianyang was just about to find a place to sit down and comprehend the power he had obtained from the dragon god's blessing. However, when he turned his head, he saw a man who was as strong as an iron mountain standing in front of him. Meanwhile, the cultivators behind him were glaring at him like tigers, leopards, and wolves. No matter what, the Cloud Dragon Palace belongs to the human tribe. There are only a few hundred human tribe members in the true dragon's sacred world. Only a few dozen human tribe geniuses have stepped onto the Cloud Sky battle ring. Yet, you eliminated the people from the Cloud Dragon Palace without saying anything. Are you unhappy with the human race? Do you still have the unity of the human race in your heart? The man who was as strong as an iron mountain sneered as he stared at Tianyang. In the next instant, voices sounded from behind the man who was as strong as an iron mountain. That's right. In the true dragon sacred domain, the human race has always huddled together for warmth. However, this person attacked his fellow human race the moment he arrived. How can such a person be worthy of the human race's quota? How can he be worthy of being a human? If I were him, I would have killed myself to atone for my sins. He is the enemy of the human race. See, did you hear that? Hearing the words behind him, the man who was as strong as an iron mountain smiled viciously. If you don't want us to hold you accountable for killing our fellow human race, you better be obedient. Boom. You better die obediently. Tianyang tilted his head and looked at the man who was as strong as an iron mountain. His fist, which contained a huge amount of dragon power, landed on the man's chest. In the next instant, all the bones in the man's body were broken. Blood spurted out of his mouth as he was sent flying by the punch. Chapter 1173. With just one punch, the Iron Mountain man, who had been threatening Tianyang earlier, was sent flying. He was severely injured and sent flying. Tianyang had not used his full strength in that punch. Unfortunately, the Iron Mountain man had underestimated his opponent and was much stronger than the three from the Cloud Dragon Palace. As a result, he did not even have the most basic defense on his body, leaving only a layer of useless protective vital energy. Faced with Tianyang's Dragon Emperor Divine Fist, it was still destroyed in one punch. If Tianyang had not held back, the Iron Mountain man would have been reduced to a bloody mist by now. What? Seeing this, the group of human prodigies who were cheering for the Iron Mountain man behind him were all stunned. The Iron Mountain man had accused Tianyang of many things, saying that he was dissatisfied with the human race and that he was an enemy of the human race. If it had been an ordinary person, they would have been pressured into paying the price. Otherwise, if they had accepted these accusations, the consequences would have been unimaginable. However, not only had Tianyang not paid a single price, but he had also caused their people to be severely injured. Depending on the situation, they might not be able to improve in martial arts for the rest of their lives. Arrogant. In the next instant, a tall youth charged out with a face full of rage. This kid is indeed the scum of the human race. He even dares to attack Brother Iron. He is inhumane and deranged. Let's attack immediately and get rid of this scum for the human race. The tall youth roared. In the next instant, a broad, huge sword appeared in his hand. Circulating his vital energy, he slashed viciously at Tianyang. Everlasting Blizzard. The brutal blizzard was instantly formed, making the sword look extremely powerful. The terrifying power of the sword slashed towards Tianyang's head. This sword can kill a half-sage. The tall youth laughed loudly. The sacred martial sword shone brightly in Tianyang's eyes. However, seeing this, Tianyang frowned slightly. You think you deserve to use a sword when your skills are trash? Tianyang snorted. A black light flashed in his hand, and the great void sword embryo appeared. In the next instant, he slashed out. The sword was like a swimming dragon as it slashed towards a sword of wind and snow from top to bottom. The Saint martial arts were martial techniques that incorporated the Saint path. However, not all cultivators were able to utilize the Saint path when using the Saint martial arts. Perhaps the tall young man had successfully mobilized a sliver of it, but in front of the pure power of the divine path, it was nothing. He was still unbearably weak. Sword breaking 9 desolations. That sword of the Saint Plains swordsmanship completely bloomed its incomparably powerful brilliance, even though the opponent was also a Saint Martial Saint. However, he still managed to break it with a single sword strike. Boom! The surrounding snowstorm was like a piece of paper, instantly breaking apart and turning into the spiritual energy of the world. As for the tall youth's heavy sword, a huge wound was cut open. How was this possible? The tall young man's expression changed drastically when he saw this. Even if this snowstorm sword wasn't a saint weapon, it was still an extremely powerful half-saint weapon. How could he be injured so easily? However, Tianyang's sword cleaving 9 desolations did not slow down because of the tall youth's mood. On the contrary, after easily shattering the wind and snow, he charged towards the tall youth at an even faster speed. "Everyone, save me!" The tall youth roared angrily. The Peak Wu Zun's true yuan was released, instantly condensing into a terrifying giant shield in front of him. In the next moment, the group of Peak Wu Zun humans who had been shocked by Tianyang's strength also seemed to have awakened from a dream and released their true yuan. The Iron Mountain Man had been defeated in an instant, but the tall youth could not be defeated in an instant. No matter how the treasures on Tianyang's body would be distributed in the end, at least for now, they had to kill this guy first. Dragon Cloud Swirling Wave Shield, Universe Shield, Celestial Defense Formation. Angry roars rang out in the Cloud Sky Arena. Rays of dazzling true yuan were released, and in a short while, dozens of layers of defense were formed in front of the tall youth. Perhaps in a hurry, the defense might not be too strong, but with dozens of layers stacked together, it would probably be able to easily block a full-powered attack from a half-saint. Scum of the human race. This is the unity of the human race. Seeing this, the tall youth laughed heartily. The fire of greed in his eyes burned fiercely. In his opinion, Tianyang must have used that treasure and paid a great price to be able to destroy his Saint Martial sword so easily. In other words, as long as he could block this move, this kid would be like a little chick that could be easily crushed. Terrifying killing intent flashed in the tall youth's eyes. In his eyes, Tianyang was already a dead man. Seeing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Then, his expression did not change as he turned around indifferently. Without exception, these defenses were all Saint Martial sages with the Saint Martial path as their foundation. If a half-saint was here, he would probably feel helpless against this tortoise shell. However, Tianyang was not a half-saint, but he had the Saint Martial sword Dao that a true saint might not be able to match. Boom! Boom, 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 boom. The sword breaking 9 desolation collided violently with the first layer of defense. It was even more fragile than tofu. It did not even last for 0.1 seconds before it was shattered with a loud bang. Seeing this, the tall youth's face twitched. A trace of uneasiness arose in his heart, but he forced himself to suppress it. There were dozens of Peak Wu Zun here, and there was no lack of Saint Martial sages' defenses. No matter how powerful this kid's treasure was, it could not possibly be the power of a saint. How could it not block Tianyang's attack? However, in the next moment, the sword breaking 9 desolation was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. It slaughtered the defenses that could block the full force attack of Peak Wu Zun and even the attack of a half-saint. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It was like a supreme-grade spiritual weapon cutting through a bundle of white paper. In an instant, countless defenses were shattered. In the face of the sword breaking 9 desolation, these defenses were as good as nothing. They were completely useless. How is this possible? Seeing this, the tall youth's pupils constricted, and he let out a roar of disbelief. These were the defenses of Peak Wu Zun prodigies of the human race. Even if they were broken, they cannot be broken so easily. It was as if a saint had attacked. Could this kid be a Saint Martial sage? No. If he was a saint, he would not be able to enter the Yuntian arena. The tall youth's mind was spinning rapidly. Thoughts appeared and disappeared one after another, but he still confirmed one thing. He could not defeat this person. Sir, all of this was instigated by them. It's all because they want to support the Cloud Dragon Palace and take the treasures on you. In fact, I always thought that the people of the Cloud Dragon Palace were arrogant. As long as you boom, the tall youth smiled obsequiously, but before he could finish, a bloody hole appeared at the back of his head. The sword-breaking 9 Desolation also broke through all of the defenses and bombarded the tall youth. In an instant, he died without a complete corpse. Is a bastard worth begging for mercy like this? A disdainful sneer came from behind. Xianyuan Kong retracted his finger and looked at Tianyang. I didn't expect a bastard to reach this stage. Chapter 1174. Xianyuan Kong. The moment this person appeared, all the humans who were about to beg for mercy, or had already begged for mercy, or were about to attack, all fell silent. Their gazes were fixed on that handsome man, a member of the Xianyuan family, a peerless genius who was about to break through to dual saint paths, the strongest human in the Zhenlong sacred world. Before this, Xianyuan Kong had been standing at the center of the Cloud Sky Arena, but no one, no dragon, dared to attack Xianyuan Kong. This was because they all knew that Xianyuan Kong looked like a peak Wuzun with only one saint path and was similar to Qiying Tian. However, his actual combat strength was enough to crush everyone present. He was the true king of this dragon god assembly, the Cloud Sky Arena. Now, this king had actually come here. Xianyuan Kong, why is he here? Some people were in disbelief as they looked at Xianyuan Kong's face that was gradually becoming ferocious and emitting killing intent. In their impression, shouldn't Xianyuan Kong always maintain that aloof face? Even when the dragon god's blessing descended, Xianyuan Kong's expression didn't change much. Why was it that when he saw this unknown guy now, his expression became so terrifying? Everyone's expression changed slightly, and they looked at Tianyang with bewilderment. Who was this person? Trash of the Xianyuan family. How dare you bark in front of me? Tianyang's lips curled up, revealing a bright smile. In the next moment, his figure flashed. Vast expanse 9 changes, vault of heaven change, stubborn resistance. The moment Tianyang's figure disappeared, Xianyuan Kong's expression changed slightly. He turned around, raised his hand, and blocked Tianyang's punch. At the same time, Wuzun's peak 9th level power and the Saint Realm's cloud Sea Dao exploded. Around him, boundless power of the Sea of Clouds gathered. Xianyuan Kong's surroundings once again formed an incomparably vast sea of clouds. This was not a domain, but under the special attribute of the cloud Sea Dao, it was not much different from a domain. This was the strength of the cloud Sea Dao. At Wuzun's level, the Sea of Clouds could be used as his domain. If he reached the Saint Realm, it would naturally be even better. However, the current Xianyuan Kong alone was enough to turn the entire Cloud Sky Arena into a sea of clouds. Xianyuan Kong roared. The power of Wuzun's peak and the power of the Sea of Clouds madly converged. In the next moment, it condensed into Xianyuan Kong's fist and charged toward Tianyang. Cloud-piercing 100-splitting fist. With a punch, the Sea of Clouds rolled and the space trembled. Then, a fist mark broke through the air and charged toward Tianyang. This fist print was much more powerful than the Thunder Dragon roaring palm of the handsome youth from the Cloud Dragon Palace or the tall youth from an unknown place. Wuzun and Xianyuan Kong, who were both at the peak, could suppress them countless times with a single hand. You haven't even recovered from your injuries, and you dare to be arrogant in front of your father? At this moment, Tianyang smiled slightly. The great void sword embryo in his hand casually flicked from bottom to top. A ferocious and terrifying sword radiance was born. It turned into a crescent-shaped sword radiance and charged toward Xianyuan Kong fiercely. In the next moment, the fist print and the sword radiance collided. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out from the center of the collision between the fist print and the sword radiance. Even though the space on the Cloud Sky Arena had been deliberately reinforced, cracks appeared from the pressure. It was as if a huge rock was being crushed under the heavy pressure, leaving marks on its surface. This was the case in the current space. Life and death Dao, fleeting youth. Tianyang smiled slightly, and slashed out with his sword. Two colors, one black and one white, represented two completely opposite powers. Destruction and life fused into one to unleash this slash. Fleeting Youth was originally the fusion of the Life and Death Dao and the Saint Realm Sword Dao. In terms of pure power, it was not as strong as the sword-breaking Nine Barons. However, in terms of instantaneous explosive power, it was slightly stronger than the sword-breaking Nine Barons. The fusion of life and destruction was many times stronger than Xianyuan Kong's Cloud Sea Dao. There was no sword radiance sweeping across, no heaven-shaking giant sword. There was only a flash of black and white. Xianyuan Kong was stunned. Then, he revealed an extremely shocked expression. Wu Zun, who was at his peak, released his true core strength wildly. Damn it! Divine Sun-Splitting Bow! Xianyuan Kong roared angrily. Golden light flashed in his hand, and a longbow appeared in his hand. The Xianyuan family's sacred weapon, Divine Sun-Splitting Bow. I've spent dozens of days training. Originally, I wanted to use this arrow to kill a half-saint and make my name known. I didn't expect to use it on you now. Xianyuan Kong snorted coldly. In the next moment, his body flashed. With a pinch of his fingers, an arrow appeared in his hand. Shatter the sky. In an instant, the pitch-black arrow that seemed to be born from nothingness shot out with the divine, sun-splitting bow. Boom, 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 boom. Wherever it passed, the space exploded inch by inch. Countless space fragments were blown away by the aftershock of the pitch-black arrow, forming miniature spatial turbulence. Yes, shatter the sky. At this moment, Qi Yingtian finally revealed a trace of shock on his face. Shatter the sky. It was a method of refining arrows created by one of the ancestors of the Xianyuan family, the first archer saint. According to legend, it required 100% pure black gold meteoric iron to be smelted into the shape of an arrow after 10 years of smelting. After that, it had to be fed with essence blood for 81 days before it could be refined into a shatter the sky. The essence blood could not be ordinary essence blood from the tip of the tongue. It had to be the purest blood from the heart. Only then could the power of the shatter the sky be unleashed to the maximum. So the reason why Brother Xianyuan hasn't fully recovered was because he was refining the shatter the sky. At this moment, Bai Pingyu of the Heavenly Dragon tribe suddenly realized that although the Heavenly Dragon Saint was not as powerful as the Red Dragon Saint, the resources that he could control in the true Dragon Sacred Territory were not much less than the Red Dragon Saint. Therefore, when Xianyuan Kong was severely injured by Tianyang, the resources that the Heavenly Dragon Saint gave Xianyuan Kong were enough to heal two severely injured half-saints. However, he still had not fully recovered. It turned out that he was refining the shatter the sky. Ha ha ha. Boy, you didn't expect this, did you? At this moment, Xianyuan Kong revealed a smug smile. I spent a lot of my essence blood to get this arrow, but I used it on you. I wanted to kill the saint soul with one arrow, but now, it's not bad to pierce the heart of a peerless genius. The shatter the sky was chasing the soul for 1,000 miles. Once this arrow was shot out, even a peak half-saint like the Dragon Mountain Elder would have to use all his strength to deal with it, let alone Tianyang, who was only at the peak of LV7 Wuzun realm. So what if he had two saint paths? In front of this arrow, he could only die. A peerless genius of a generation is going to die here. The Earth Dragon Saint shook his head and sighed. They could not interfere in this Yuntian arena. In other words, even they could not save Tianyang's life. They could only watch helplessly as Tianyang was killed by the sky-shattering arrow. Boom! The moment of youth and to shatter the sky collided fiercely. In the blink of an eye, black and white electric light bloomed. However, no matter how weak Xianyuan Kong was, he was infinitely close to Wu Zun, who was at the peak of dual saint paths. In addition to the terrifying enhancement of the sky shatter arrow, the moment of youth was shattered in just 3 seconds. Once you die, even if your undying bloodline is superb, you can't come back to life. Xianyuan Kong laughed wildly. Tianyang, was engraved on the Xianyuan family's internal wanted list. If he could kill Tianyang, he could even enter the dual saint path without the myriad dragon steel and easily become a half-saint. Even a dual saint path like the moment of youth can't block it. Seeing this, Tianyang raised an eyebrow. The moment of youth had merged his life and death Dao and Saint Realm Sword Dao, two saint paths. However, it could not block the attack of the Sky Shatter Arrow. Even if he switched to the stronger cycle of life and death, he might not be able to block it. But a dual saint path won't work. Try a triple saint path? Tianyang smirked. Chapter 1175. The Myriad Divine Way, the Way of Life and Death, and the Sword Way of the Saint Realm. In the blink of an eye, Tianyang's aura changed once again. If one were to say that Tianyang was merely a prodigy who had shown off his abilities and possessed great battle prowess, but had not exceeded everyone's expectations, then Tianyang had become a prodigy. Right now, the Heavenly Sun was like a demon king. Just by standing there, he was constantly releasing terrifying auras. The Crimson Dragon Saint was taken aback. He looked at Heavenly Sun in bewilderment. Tianyang had not hidden his beauty at all, so it was easy to see that Tianyang had the dual saint path. Otherwise, the Earth Dragon Xingdu would not have let out such a regretful sigh. If such a prodigy was given a few hundred years, he might be able to become a saint. Moreover, Wu Zun's dual saint path was at the peak of the 7th level. He was much stronger than the Earth Dragon Saint and the Heaven Dragon Saint. If he was lucky enough, he might be able to become a new great saint in the future. Unfortunately, he could only die under the Xianyuan family's sky-shattering arrow. However, there seemed to be a turning point now. This kid still has a trump card. The Red Dragon Saint looked at Tianyang, who was calm and did not show any fear. He was shocked. Ever since he became a great saint, he had rarely been so shocked. Wu Zun, who was at the peak of the 7th level, could easily kill Wu Zun, who was at the peak of the 7th level. He also fought with Xianyuan Kong, a prodigy who was close to the dual saint path, and even severely injured him. That was enough to shock the world. However, when everyone thought that Tianyang was done for, Tianyang would pull out something else and change their impression of him. As expected of the son of the person whom even the Xianyuan family is wary of, the Red Dragon Saint sighed when he saw Tianyang's calm expression. As a great saint, he naturally knew many secrets that ordinary great saints did not know. For example, the imprisoned heavenly maiden of the Xianyuan family and the man from another world who killed countless peak-level Wu Zun in the Xianyuan family. Back then, Tian Hao had killed his way into the Xianyuan family alone with his sword, and Wu Zun at the peak of the 7th stage of the martial saint realm. He had killed almost all of the 8th-stage Wu Zun in the Xianyuan family. Even Wu Zun, who was at his peak, had killed 3 of them. In the end, a sage and a half-sage intervened and captured Tian Hao. Now it seems, although Tianyang was much younger than Tian Hao in terms of cultivation strength, he was stronger than Tian Hao. In fact, he was much stronger. How is this possible? On the Cloud Sky Arena, Xianyuan Kong was not the only one whose heart was in turmoil. Even the other humans and dragons who were watching the battle were shocked. The strength of the sky-shattering arrow was already comparable to an ordinary half-saint's burning true essence attack. Even a peak half-saint would have to take this attack seriously. They all agreed that Tianyang would die without a doubt. Now, the one who would die without a doubt was no longer Tianyang. I haven't tried fusing 3 saint paths yet. Tianyang muttered in a voice that no one but him could hear. In the next moment, he looked up and the great void sword embryo in his hand shone with rays of light. 3 saint paths. In the entire Xintian great world, he was definitely a top genius. 2 saint paths were understandable, but 3 saint paths meant that they were the most terrifying geniuses in the world. Either they did everything they could to recruit them under their command, or they did everything they could to kill him. That was why Tianyang did not use his Saint Realm Alchemy Dao. The myriad Saint Realm Alchemy Dao was much more inclusive than the Saint Realm Alchemy Dao. He could also use the power of the Saint Realm Sword Dao and the Tao of life and death to conceal himself. Even the Crimson Dragon sage could only vaguely sense that something was amiss, but he could not pinpoint what exactly was wrong. I don't believe it. At that moment, Xin Yuan Kong suddenly let out a ferocious roar in the sky. I don't believe it. You must be bluffing. How could a trash from a small world, a bastard, have so many trump cards? Sky-shattering arrow, kill him for me. Xin Yuan Kong roared and integrated the cloud sea Tao and the space Tao into it. The sky-shattering arrow also released a terrifying xinguang that had never been seen before. It was as if it was going to shatter the sky. Around the sky-shattering arrow, there was a space-shattering zone that extended for countless meters. Die! Xin Yuan Kong roared ferociously. Wu Zun's true origin was burning. At that moment, Tianyang moved. Martial soul, heavenly sword out. He used the heavens expanse 9 changes and disappeared from where he was. Then, a terrifying devouring power was released from Tianyang's body. Martial soul talent, heaven devouring secret skill. All the surrounding energy was sucked into Tianyang's body as if it was being devoured by a giant starry sky beast. In the next moment, the great void sword embryo in Tianyang's hand merged with the heavenly sword. The thousand creations divine path, life and destruction Tao, and sage realm sword Tao also reached their limits. True origin, Wu Zun realm level 8. Thousand creations annihilation. Tianyang roared and slashed out with his sword. The 3 saint paths merged together perfectly. In the next moment, it transformed into an extremely dazzling and terrifying sword light that shattered the space and completely wiped out the spatial turbulence caused by the heaven-shattering arrow. It was as if the space turbulence did not exist at all. Suddenly, the sword light disappeared. Xin Yuan Kong was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, he laughed maniacally. Ha ha! You can't hold it anymore? Then die for me. Wu Zun's true origin was released wildly and infused into the sky-shattering arrow. However, the sky-shattering arrow did not react and even froze in the air. Boom! Suddenly, it exploded and turned into fragments that filled the sky. What? Seeing this, Xin Yuan Kong's expression changed drastically. He felt an endless sense of danger. The power of the sea of clouds instantly gathered to form a giant shield around him. Even the saints of the dragon tribe were shocked. The sky-shattering arrow was broken? When did it break? Space turbulence. Xin Yuan Kong roared and used the space Tao to distort the surrounding space. If the space turbulence could be used successfully, then the distorted space would help Xin Yuan Kong block most of the power. By then, it would be up to Xin Yuan Kong whether he could retreat or stay. At this moment, a sword light suddenly appeared again. Xin Yuan Kong's expression froze on the spot. Stop! At this moment, the heavenly dragon sage roared. He did not even bother to transform into his human form. He waved his dragon claws and charged toward the Yuntian battle ring. However, it was too late. That beam of sword light slashed through the air with great force. Wherever it passed, ripples appeared in the space. Not a single bit of power leaked out. All of the power had erupted in the instant it passed through Xin Yuan Kong. Boom! In the end, Xin Yuan Kong's expression froze on his face with fear. Then, his body and primordial spirit were blasted into pieces by the terrifying sword energy. A sword in the air. Chapter 1176. A sword slashed through the air, killing all the prodigies. After this sword slashed down, the other prodigies on the Cloud Sky Arena were all overshadowed. Even the previous generation's strongest prodigy of the dragon race, a prodigy who was also close to the dual saint path, and the current dragon race's strongest prodigy, Qi Ingtian, were the same. 10 minutes ago, the entire Cloud Sky Arena's glory belonged to Xin Yuan Kong. 10 minutes later, the entire Cloud Sky Arena was dominated by a human youth. Crazy, crazy. At this moment, a human youth was on the verge of collapse. He knelt on the ground and looked at the rain of blood that kept falling from the sky. This guy's crazy. That human youth's face was trembling, and his entire body was dominated by fear. He completely did not think that Tianyang would be strong after killing Xin Yuan Kong. Perhaps he was really strong and had unparalleled talent. Perhaps he could compete with a few prodigies of the Central Continent. However, it was only a possibility. Right now, Tianyang was a loner who had no one to rely on. Yet he did not care at all and directly killed Xin Yuan Kong. He did not even care about Tianlong Sheng, who had stepped in to save him. The Xin Yuan family would definitely go berserk. It's over, he's finished, we're finished too. At this moment, a cry of despair came from the mouth of a rather pretty girl. Apart from a small number of people, all the humans present were filled with sorrow and despair. It's all because of you. At this moment, the girl suddenly raised her head and looked at Tianyang with incomparable resentment. In the next moment, her figure flashed, and she charged madly towards Tianyang. It's all because of you. It's all because of you. Not only does the Xin Yuan family want to deal with you, but they also want to deal with us. When the time comes, we'll all die at the hands of the Xin Yuan family. It's all because you killed Xin Yuan Kong. The girl was like a madwoman as she pounced towards Tianyang. However, Tianyang casually waved his hand. An energy beam easily sent the girl flying, and she almost fell off the Cloud Sky Arena. Didn't you say that you were the enemy of the human race? So what if I killed you? Tianyang scornfully glanced at these so-called geniuses who, half an hour ago, had been condemning him, judging him as the scum of the humankind and the scum of the humankind. After Xin Yuan Kong was killed, they became like ants trembling in fear on the side of the road after being trampled to death. Jump down yourself. Otherwise, don't think that I won't dare to kill you, Tianyang said indifferently. Hearing this, the young girl who almost fell down suddenly trembled all over. Only then did she remember. Previously, he had criticized Tianyang and tried to divide the treasures on Tianyang. Now, their greatest backer, Xin Yuan Kong, was dead. Were they not fish on the chopping block, waiting to be slaughtered? Almost 90% of the human geniuses who had attacked the Tianyang jumped down without hesitation. This person had even dared to kill the genius of the Xin Yuan family, Xin Yuan Kong. Why wouldn't he dare to kill them? A few of them still had the mentality that Tianyang didn't pay attention to them because there were too many people. However, the power of Tianyang's primordial spirit was close to that of a half-saint. Even if it was just a rough scan, wouldn't it be easy for him to remember dozens of faces? Tianyang couldn't be bothered to cause trouble for those who jumped down themselves, but Tianyang had no choice but to attack those who refused to give up. In the end, of course, they broke their arms and legs and fell down themselves into the mud like dogs. As for Tianyang, who had done all this, his expression was as calm as an ancient well. There was no change in his expression at all. Numbers weren't the reason why Tianyang didn't kill them. This group of people wanted to divide the treasures on him. The fact that Tianyang didn't start a massacre was already a huge act of kindness. Kid, at this moment, the stunned Tianlong Saint finally spoke. As soon as he spoke, the surrounding air pressure dropped to a terrifying level. It was as if the air had frozen. With Xin Yuan Kong dead, Tianlong Saint no longer had a reason to attack. However, Tianlong Saint's expression was still extremely gloomy. The surrounding air pressure was suppressed to an extremely low level by the saintly aura that permeated the air. Not only will the Xin Yuan family be infuriated, but even Tianlong Saint is infuriated. At this moment, the remaining humans who didn't attack Tianyang and weren't directly blasted down looked at the gloomy Tianlong Saint with a trace of fear. This time, this kid is dead for sure. The Xin Yuan family was a family of the divine Central Continent with 3 supreme saints. Even if Xin Yuan Kong wasn't the strongest genius, he still had the potential to become a saint. If Xin Yuan Kong died, the Xin Yuan family would at least send a saint to kill him. And now, there was Tianlong Saint. Xin Yuan Kong was someone whom Tianlong Saint had condescended to go to Xin Yuan Kong's training ground and invited with the Platinum Dragon God token. Now that Xin Yuan Kong was dead, there was no doubt that it was a slap to Tianlong Saint's face. Wu Zun, who was at the peak of LV7, might not even need to escape when faced with the pursuit of 2 saints. Old bastard, what are you trying to say? At this moment, Tianyang raised his head and looked at Tianlong Saint's face, which looked as if it was about to drip water, and chuckled. Hearing this, other than Qi, Ying Tian, and Red Dragon Saint, all the dragons held their breaths. Their faces were filled with horror. Not only did this guy not lower his head in the face of Tianlong Saint, but he also killed Xian Yuan Kong. And now, he was still so arrogant in front of Tianlong Saint. You! Tianlong Saint was instantly enraged. Red Dragon Saint spoke at this moment. Dragon Saints and Half-Saints are not allowed to interfere in the Yuntian arena. Moreover, in a chaotic battle, it's inevitable that there will be casualties. Moreover, the one who died was only a Platinum Dragon God token. Red Dragon Saint chuckled. Tianlong Saint felt as if he had swallowed a fly. The Platinum Dragon God token was Xianyuan Kong's status in the True Dragon's sacred domain. The Xianyuan family's background? Yes, it was indeed powerful, but could Tianlong Saint say it out loud? Once he said it out loud, Tianlong Saint, would become the Xianyuan family's dog. At that time, it would be unknown if the True Dragon's sacred domain would still tolerate him. Tianyang, with his status as a Platinum Dragon God token, killed a Platinum Dragon God token in the Yuntian arena where life and death were not allowed. No matter how one looked at it, they could not find fault with Tianyang. Tianlong Saint snorted angrily, turned around, and flew towards Sky Dragon City. He could not stay in the Dragon Divine faction any longer. Red Dragon Saint's expression did not change when he saw this. He was a great saint. Tianlong Saint must be retarded to offend him. However, this brat has quite the guts. Red Dragon Saint took a deep look at Tianyang, then returned to his original state. The Yuntian arena continued under an oppressive atmosphere. In the end, Tianyang stood on the spot without moving, successfully becoming the final five. Chapter 1177. Looking at the four dragons and one person on the Cloud Sky arena, countless humans below were filled with envy and regret. After his battle with Xianyuan Kong, Tianyang didn't make a move again. Even the Earth Dragon clan's genius Huang Long, who was known for his arrogance, was the same. It was as if they were all scared out of their wits. Not to mention attacking Tianyang, they didn't even dare to get within 3 feet of Tianyang. It was as if some kind of domain was isolating them. If they hadn't made a move against Tianyang, they might have been able to rely on Tianyang's halo of humanity to keep a few of them alive. Those who had ridiculed Tianyang were now filled with regret. It was just a treasure. How could it compare to a cultivation holy land like the myriad dragon steel? As for those who were watching on the sidelines, they weren't feeling any better. After all, watching on the sidelines was actually a form of silent support for Xianyuan Kong. They kept saying that they wanted to unite the human race, but when Tianyang was besieged, they still didn't do anything. In the end, Tianyang also watched on the sidelines. Only Tianyang, Qi Ying Tian, Bai Pengyu, Wu Zun from the Golden Dragon clan, Jinzhan, and Lan Ji from the Sea Dragon clan remained. For Tianyang, the only one who posed a threat was Jinzhan. Qi Ying Tian was the strongest genius in the True Dragon's sacred domain, but Tianyang had easily knocked him into the ground. The remaining Bai Pengyu and Lan Ji weren't much of a threat. However, Jinzhan was only a small dragon clan in the True Dragon's sacred domain and wasn't as strong as the Crimson Dragons, Sea Dragons, Sky Dragons, and Earth Dragons. However, Jinzhan was the strongest genius in the True Dragon's sacred domain in the last 1,000 years. Like Xianyuan Kong, he had suppressed his cultivation and strived to step into the dual saint path before Wu Zun to lay the foundation for the true saint realm. If Xianyuan Kong hadn't used the sky-shattering arrow, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Jinzhan. Not bad, not bad. The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled as he looked at the 4 dragons on the Cloud Sky arena. Qi Yingtian's performance was no surprise, but Jinzhan's was beyond his expectations. If his Supreme Saint eyesight wasn't wrong, Jinzhan's cultivation of the second saint path was even stronger than Xianyuan Kong's. Big brother, you're on the Cloud Sky battle stage. As soon as the battle ended, Qi Yingtian immediately ran to Tianyang's side and looked at him with reverence. You even killed Xianyuan Kong. Big brother, How can you be so strong? Hearing this, Tianyang with his shoulders, Tianyuan calm. Right now, his Saint Realm Sword Dao, Life and Death Dao, Myriad Dao, Saint Realm Alchemy Dao, and Boundless Dao had all reached the Saint Realm. Dao Dao, S's Dao Dao Saint, S Dao's Daos for Dao Daos. With his power close to 6 Saint Paths and 3 Saint Paths, he still couldn't defeat a mere Xianyuan Kong? Was the Xianyuan family too arrogant? Or was the Tianji Sword Emperor too weak to hold his sword? Then, the Cloud Sky Arena's over. At this moment, the Red Dragon Saint spoke, his expression instantly becoming extremely solemn. Qi Yingtian, who had been bragging, also quieted down and looked up at the Crimson Dragon Saint. Next, we'll open the Myriad Dragon Steel. The winner of the Cloud Sky Arena can enter the Myriad Dragon Steel to cultivate for a month. The Crimson Dragon Saint said loudly. Immediately, the humans who had been blasted out of the arena and eliminated looked even more regretful. The Myriad Dragon Steel was the Xiantian Great World's famous holy land for cultivating the Saint Path. As long as one went in, those with even a little bit of talent would be able to cultivate a Saint Path. The Crimson Dragon Saint waved his hand. The power of a Supreme Saint was released instantly. However, unlike the Heavenly Dragon Saint's power, the Crimson Dragon Saint didn't have the slightest bit of pressure. If it weren't for the ripples in space, one wouldn't be able to tell that the Crimson Dragon Saint was attacking. At this moment, Tianyang's pupils contracted slightly. He had devoured a large amount of the Tianshao Great World's world origin, so he naturally saw the Crimson Dragon Saint's attack more clearly. The Crimson Dragon Saint had directly entered the True Dragon Sacred World's world origin. Open! The Crimson Dragon Saint roared, and a terrifying spatial storm swept out. That terrifying pressure was so strong that even peak Wuzun like Jin Zhan and Qi Yingtian would be severely injured if they were caught in it. Even a half-saint wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. At this moment, the Crimson Dragon Saint raised his hand. The spatial storm immediately dissipated into nothingness as if it had never existed. Saints could easily change the world, but the world was just a facade. As for Supreme Saints, they could directly change the world itself. Is this the Supreme Saint Realm? Tianyang's heart wavered. This power was too strong. I'll say this first. Although the 10,000 Dragon Steel is known as a holy land for cultivating the Saint Path, it doesn't mean that cultivating inside is the best. The 10,000 Dragon Steel is located in the True Dragon Sacred World's world origin, and it contains endless Saint Path power. Cultivating there for 1 second will cause one to be attacked by the Saint Path for 1 second. Therefore, although it's said that you can cultivate there for a month, there are very few who can cultivate there for a month every time the 10,000 Dragon Steel opens. I hope that you can do your best. The Crimson Dragon Saint said. The 5 people in the Cloud Sky Arena, other than Tianyang, were all extremely powerful geniuses. They were the future hope of the True Dragon Sacred World. As the leader of the True Dragon Sacred World, the Crimson Dragon Saint naturally didn't want anyone in his race to die because of a cultivation session. Yes, Qi Yingtian and the other dragons said solemnly. Then, enter the 10,000 Dragon Steel. The Crimson Dragon Saint waved his hand, and the spatial door that had caused the spatial storm suddenly enlarged. Tianyang and the other 4 also stepped into it. I wonder what kind of waves this kid will bring to the Xianyuan family. The Crimson Dragon Saint chuckled a second before Tianyang stepped into the spatial door. He had a premonition that it would happen in the near future. The Xianyuan family, which had dominated the Xianyuan Great World for countless years, would definitely be shaken. The 10,000 Dragon Steel. To be precise, it was the True Dragon Sacred World's world origin where the 10,000 Dragon Steel was located. I didn't expect the True Dragon Sacred World to be so rich. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang in Tianyang's mind. Tianyang was stunned, and then he recognized the voice. It was the voice of the little golden girl from the Heaven's Expanse Temple. Although the Saint Paths contained in this world origin can't be compared to a complete great world, it still contains hundreds of saint paths. Moreover, it has created an extremely suitable environment for saint path cultivation. The little golden girl said. Then, Tianyang's expression changed. The chapter of the heavens, expanse, 9 changes suddenly appeared in his mind. So, you can definitely do it here. Chapter 1178. The vast expanse way had entered the divine way. Tianyang's expression changed. Then, a look of joy appeared on his face. The vast expanse way was closely related to the space way. Even the vast expanse 9 changes, which was mainly based on the vast expanse way, was closely related to the space way. If the vast expanse way could enter the divine way, it would be of great benefit to Tianyang's cultivation of the space way. The divine wilderness heavenly spirit mantra had paid a huge price to break through the barrier of naturally terminated meridians. For example, the speed of cultivation was extremely slow. Tianyang was about to enter his 30s, but he was still at the peak of Wu Zun's 7th level. Every time he advanced, it was either due to a coincidental huge opportunity or he had to spend a lot of time to achieve it. The last time he broke through to Wu Zun's 6th level, it took Tianyang half a year. However, this did not mean that Tianyang was at a disadvantage. Ordinary geniuses cultivated too quickly and could not control themselves. When they cultivated a divine way, their cultivation had already reached the peak. Wu Zun was only a step away from the half-saint level. Without the strength and determination of Xianyuan Kong and Jin Zhan, almost no one dared to suppress their cultivation and continue to comprehend the divine way to break through to the half-saint level. After all, suppressing one's cultivation did not mean that it could be raised again. The opportunity to break through to the half-saint level was something that could only be chanced upon. Even a genius like Xianyuan Kong could not guarantee that he could break through to the half-saint level. The only thing he could do was to suppress his cultivation and increase his chances of breaking through to the half-saint level. However, Tianyang did not have such concerns. Due to the endless spirit sea, Tianyang's cultivation was extremely slow. Tianyang's ability to comprehend the divine way was much stronger than ordinary cultivators. With time and talent, if Tianyang did not comprehend the divine way, who would? Then, there's no time to lose. Tianyang's lips curled. In the next moment, he sank into his cultivation state. The heavenly expanse 9 transformations activated automatically, and the Tao of space slowly spread out from the boundless Saint Tao power in the surroundings, encircling the heavenly sun. After the boundless Tao, it was slowly recovering in this environment that was filled with Saint Tao, and it was rapidly growing stronger. At the side, Qi Tian was still immersed in this mysterious and powerful environment. When he saw Tianyang immediately enter his cultivation state, he was dumbfounded. Big brother, how is he so fast? One had to know that this was the origin of the true dragon, sacred world. It was filled with the power of the divine way. Only true sage realm almighties would be like fish in water here. The others, even half-step sage realm experts, would need time to adjust. Saw. And of Dragon. Streams of saintly path power surged toward the heavenly sun like swallows flying into one's arms. As for Tianyang, he was absorbing the Saint Tao energy at an unimaginable speed. At the same time, his aura was growing rapidly. This, Qi Tian, by Pengyu, Jin Zhan, and Lan Ji were dumbfounded. They couldn't get over it for a long time. They didn't know that this was the origin of the true dragon, sacred world. It contained the divine way imprints of the true dragon, sacred world's dragon saints. The more divine ways one had, the stronger they were. In this place filled with divine ways, they would be like fish in water. Saint Realm Almighties had cultivated their divine way to an extremely high level. Naturally, it was very easy for them. Tianyang had 6 divine ways in the Xiantian Great World. He might even break through to 7 divine ways. In terms of integration, he might be much stronger than a saint. However, they didn't know. Therefore, there was only one thought in their minds. Are you a dragon? Or, am I a dragon? Heavenly Expanse, 9 changes. 4th change, shift change. Tianyang roared and released the Heavenly Expanse, 9 changes in the origin of the true dragon's sacred world. Tianyang disappeared from the spot. The next time he appeared, he was at the edge of the origin of the true dragon's sacred world. The origin of the true dragon's sacred world wasn't big. It was only about half the size of the plains outside where the dragon god assembly was held. Tianyang didn't use much of his speed. From the center of the 10,000 dragon steel, he teleported to the edge. This speed, compared to the sky vault change, it's much stronger. Tianyang looked at his feet in shock. The 10,000 dragon steel was originally more oppressive than the outside world. Even so, Tianyang could still explode with such terrifying speed. The Heavenly Expanse, Tao, that had stepped into the Saint Realm was indeed extraordinary. Chaotic Dragon Devouring Formation. Tianyang waved his hand. Countless formation runes condensed in front of him. Instantly, hundreds of curved and straight formation runes shot out from hundreds of points. They intertwined and formed a huge formation that covered 100 miles. Every point seemed to be formed naturally, and every line was flawless. True Yuan flowed within. Just a little bit more, and it would explode with the terrifying power of this huge formation. This was instantly condensing a formation that covered 100 miles. Saint Realm Array Tao. I didn't expect there to be so many dragon sages that studied Array Tao in the true dragon sacred world. There are even half-step great sages among them. Tianyang chuckled. What surprised him was that there were dragon sages that cultivated Array Tao in the true dragon sacred world. Compared to the space Tao, there were many more. Therefore, Tianyang was able to absorb the Saint Realm insights of these dragon sages and quickly convert them into his own understanding. His Array Tao had also stepped into the Saint Realm. However, my Heavenly Expanse Tao has stabilized. My Array Tao is still a little unstable. Next, I'll do my best to cultivate Array Tao and True Yuan. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up. Then, he once again entered a state of cultivation. At this moment, on the other side, Bai Pingyu and Lan Ji, who had been unable to withstand the terrifying Saint Realm pressure of the 10,000 dragon steel, looked at Tianyang, who was excitedly experimenting. Their faces were full of despair. This guy, instead of cultivating properly, he woke up in the middle and used a few big moves to attack their hearts. Did he come out to torture them? It had only been half a month since he entered. Half a month later, Tianyang woke up again. However, this time, he was forcefully awakened by the changes in the land of origin. Rays of light flowed through his eyes. It was as if he had comprehended some truth of heaven and earth. Tianyang's body trembled slightly. It was as if there was a surging power that was about to explode. Heavenly Expanse Tao, Saint Realm. Array Tao, Saint Realm. 7th Saint Realm. True Yuan. From the peak of Wu Zun's 7th level. He had stepped into Wu Zun's 9th level. Although it was a little unstable, it would be completely stabilized after a period of tempering. The current Tianyang. Chapter 1179. Wu Zun Stage 9. Bolts of lightning shot out from Tianyang's body, and he was surrounded by a terrifying amount of saint energy. It was only in the land of origin of the true dragon's sacred domain, where there was boundless saint path power, that Tianyang's abnormality was not noticed by others. However, if they were in the outside world, the strange phenomenon around Tianyang's body would be seen by others, and they would definitely be shocked. After all, even those who had just entered the saint stage might not be able to do this. Although I haven't entered the half-saint stage, I am confident that I can defeat the Dragon Mountain Elder. Tianyang clenched his fists, and with a thought, the strange phenomenon disappeared. As for Tianyang, he lifted his head and looked at the slowly opening spatial door. His gaze seemed to penetrate the world barrier and reach the endless starry sky, and he saw a huge prison in the depths of the starry sky. In the space bag, the all-heaven sword that he hadn't used for a long time kept flashing, as if it had realized that Tianyang's strength was no longer the same as before. He was now capable of going to the starry sky to save Shuntian Wuzuan. Several tens of thousands of years have passed. Likely, demon-exalted Hua Tian's current strength is not far from his peak. However, even if a saint stage cultivator attacks, I am confident that I can escape unscathed. Now I can go to the soul prison and give it a try, Tianyang muttered to himself. At this time, the space door had expanded to a point where one could enter and exit at will. The 10,000 dragon steel's repulsive force towards Tianyang's 4 dragons, and one person was also getting stronger. Big brother, let's go, Qi Tian said. In the next moment, he circulated his true yuan and rushed towards the space door. In the blink of an eye, Qi Tian's figure disappeared, and Jin Zhan, Lan Ji, and Bai Pingyu all left. Although the 10,000 dragon steel was a good place, it would only open once in a long time. If one was trapped here, the chaos and silence would be enough to drive any strong-willed person crazy. Tianyang nodded slightly and used the 4th change of the heavens expanse 9 changes and disappeared from the 10,000 dragon steel. He's out. At this moment, on the vast plains, countless dragons stared fixedly at the spatial gate. When they saw a few dragon shadows appear together, they were instantly incomparably excited. In particular, he could feel that their auras were countless times stronger than they were a month ago. The 10,000 dragons steel was indeed a holy land for cultivation. Even the heavens expanse Saint Palace could not compare to the 10,000 dragons steel in terms of variety. Tianyang was not the only one who had raised his cultivation base to Wu Zun's 9th level. He had also cultivated the vast expanse, Saintly Way, and the Saintly Realm Array Dao, as well as a trace of the Space Dao's mysteries. Qi Tian and Jin Zhan also gain a lot. Qi Tian had only just mastered the first Saint Path. He didn't even dare to think about the second one. However, after a month of cultivation, Qi Tian had managed to cultivate the destruction Dao to a certain level. If he was lucky enough, Qi Tian could cultivate this Dao of destruction to the Saint Realm. As for Jin Zhan, he was already comparable to Xianyuan Kong and was close to the dual Saint Path. This time, he had stepped into the dual Saint Path, becoming a rare, peerless genius in the Xiantian Great World. If I'm not mistaken, Jin Zhan will be the candidate that the Zhenlong Sacred World will send to the Xiantian Godly Assembly. However, he has to step into the Saint Realm first. It's not easy to step into the Saint Realm with 2 Saint Paths, even if he has accumulated enough. It depends on fate. However, even if he can't step into the Saint Realm before the God's Assembly opens, the Zhenlong Sacred World still has a genius with 2 Saint Paths. Perhaps, even if the Red Dragon Saint has fallen, the Zhenlong Sacred World still has a Supreme Saint. Some human experts discussed. A genius with 2 Saint Paths had appeared in the Zhenlong Sacred World, which made them envious. Although they were all in the Saint Realm, when they were in the Wuzun Realm, they only had 1 Saint Path. Compared to 2 Saint Paths, it was like heaven and earth. In the history of the Xiantian Great World, all the Supreme Saints were in the Wuzun Realm with 2 Saint Paths. However, we humans also have a genius with 2 Saint Paths. It's a pity that I don't know which faction he is from. The human saint turned his gaze to Tianyang, who had just walked out of the space gate. However, the human race's saint's expression changed, and his pupils constricted slightly when he saw it. He couldn't tell what Tianyang's aura was like. What's wrong? Seeing his friend fall silent, the other human saint couldn't help but turn his head and look at Tianyang. As soon as he saw it, a look of disbelief appeared on his face. How could a Saint Realm expert not see through Wuzun? What had this guy done in a month? Just a month ago, Tianyang's cultivation had been completely exposed in front of them, and they had easily seen through his cultivation. He's definitely a super genius. The first human saint to notice Tianyang was envious. Even a saint couldn't see through Wuzun. Either he had 3 Saint Paths, or there were other reasons. 3 Saint Paths was unlikely, but there were other reasons. If they could take him in, their sect would definitely be powerful in the future. Wait. Just as the saint was about to walk out and extend an olive branch to Tianyang, the human saint behind him spoke. He killed Xinyuan Kong. These words slowly rang out. It wasn't just the human saints who heard it. Even the other human and dragon race experts paused and fell into deep thought. As for the human race's saint, he fell silent and slowly retreated. Killing Xinyuan Kong meant offending the Xinyuan family. Then, he could only pray for the best. The human saints weren't the only ones who thought so. The other experts felt the same. It wasn't worth offending a colossus of the divine central continent for a genius. Tianyang didn't care about the other saints at all. Instead, he cupped his fists at the Crimson Dragon Saint. "Thank you, Crimson Dragon Saint, for helping me this time." Tianyang smiled. The Dragon God Assembly was indeed thanks to the Crimson Dragon Saint's help this time. Otherwise, he would have been killed hundreds of times by the Heavenly Dragon Saint. "It's all right. You took care of my son and have a relationship with the Crimson Dragon Wuzun, the benefactor of the Crimson Dragon clan. It's only right that I help you." The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled and then looked at the plains. Although the cultivation of the all-dragon steel was over, the Dragon God Assembly wasn't over yet. "What about the rest of the ancestral ceremony? You're not interested. So, are you leaving?" The Crimson Dragon Saint smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. He didn't have the strength before, so he could bear with it. Now, if Tianyang unleashed his full strength, he could kill a peak half-saint. He could even fight a Saint Realm expert. If he met the Heavenly Dragon Saint again, he might be able to block that move. Naturally, he couldn't wait any longer. "That's good." The Crimson Dragon Saint nodded and looked at Tianyang with approval. If it were someone else, they would probably want to stay and use their relationship with Kaingshan to climb up to a Supreme Saint and obtain an opportunity. "Then, I'll help you." The Crimson Dragon Saint waved his hand, and a spatial door to the outside world opened. "Thank you, Dragon Saint." Tianyang nodded slightly and stepped in. Instantly, he disappeared from the true dragon's sacred domain. He was back in the Xintian Great World. Chapter 1180. West Spirit State, 10,000 miles mountain range. Tianyang did not know where he was. However, he could still sense that the beacon he had left at the Hong family was still in good condition. Since it was in good condition, Tianyang did not have to worry about it. It was midnight in the mountain range. The moon was high in the sky, but it was covered by layers of dark clouds. The stars were scattered, but there was almost nothing. If a mortal was left here, he would not be able to move more than a few miles, even after walking for an entire night. "It's a dark and windy night," Tianyang suddenly said. In the next moment, Wu Zun's aura of an LV9 state exploded in all directions along with streaks of terrifying sword chi. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The streaks of sword chi were like an arced sword formation arranged side by side. It was like a sword domain, killing everything in its path without a single blind spot. Boom, boom, boom. Loud noises were heard. The sword chi that was shot out from one direction did not sweep across like the other sword chi. Instead, it hit an extremely sturdy object and was destroyed. "Oh no!" At that moment, an aged voice sounded. He had reacted the moment he attacked. However, he was a step too late. He had been discovered. "How did you discover me?" Since he had been discovered, the old voice did not hide anymore and walked out from the darkness. A white-haired old man in a white robe with a white beard looked at Tianyang with fear. He held a wooden scepter in his hand. He had been lying in ambush at this place earlier than Tianyang, but Tianyang had discovered him in less than 3 seconds. He had purposely found out the location of the Red Dragon Sage's teleportation portal and had been lying in ambush there for 3 days and 3 nights. It's the night of the killing. Tianyang didn't answer the white-bearded elder's question. Instead, his figure flashed the next second as he brazenly attacked. The massacre territory was opened instantly, and the 4th change of the Heavenly Expanse 9 changes was unleashed. It was so fast that it was close to teleportation. Tianyang arrived in front of the old man in less than 0.01 seconds. The fledgling form of the body of the Dragon Emperor was activated, and he threw a punch. Night of murder? Facing Tianyang's lightning-fast fists, the white-bearded old man smiled disdainfully. I'm afraid you can't kill me. In the next moment, the white-bearded old man also punched out. The dragon force at the peak of the half-saint level condensed on the fist and collided with Tianyang's Dragon Emperor fist. Boom! In an instant, lightning surged and dust flew. The space of the Xintian Great World was not as stable as that of the Jinlong Sacred World. The surrounding space was like an earthquake. Suddenly, a terrifying fissure that was hundreds of meters long was torn open. He also has 2 brushes. Tianyang's expression changed slightly, and he immediately retreated. In the next moment, the boundless killing intent in the massacre domain rushed towards the white-bearded elder's soul. What? The white-bearded elder, who had just repelled Tianyang and was feeling smug, suddenly sensed the terrifying attack that was about to hit his soul. His expression changed, and he formed a seal with both hands. A light flashed between his eyebrows. Under the illumination of the light, the killing intent condensed by the massacre domain seemed to have a physical form, and it was exposed to the 2 of them. As for the white-bearded old man, he immediately made his move and shattered the murderous aura. I thought it was something big, so it's just a small trick. Seeing the killing intent attack dissipate, the white-bearded elder sneered. However, compared to people of the same age, you're quite strong. It's a pity that you're up against Xianyuan Kong, Lord Tianlong, Sacred Master. The white-bearded elder sneered. Then his body trembled, and he threw another punch at Tianyang. The genuine yuan of a peak half-saint and the physical strength of a peak half-saint from the dragon tribe. Boom! Tianyang only had time to raise his hand to parry the blow, and he was pushed back a few hundred meters. On the other hand, the white-bearded elder was relaxed and calm. You're just a piece of trash. Do you think you're worthy of my attack? Looking at Tianyang, who was pushed back by his punch, the white-bearded elder showed a trace of disdain. He had thought that the human tribe genius, who could kill Xianyuan Kong, would not be strong. Now, it seemed that he was only a little stronger than Xianyuan Kong. Compared to a peak half-saint like him, he was just a piece of trash. Xianyuan Kong claimed that he could fight against a peak half-saint. Now, it seemed that it was mostly boasting. How could one know the strength of a half-saint without becoming a half-saint? My name is Lord Baijiju, and I'm a peak half-saint. Being able to die in my hands is the greatest honor of your life. The white-bearded elder sneered. In the next moment, his body flashed. His palm, which contained the terrifying power of a half-saint and physical strength, was aimed at Tianyang's head. If hit, even with Qi Yingtian's physical strength, his head would probably explode. So this is what a peak half-saint looks like. At this moment, a chuckle came from Tianyang's mouth. In the next moment, the white-bearded elder suddenly felt that something was wrong. The dragon power in his hand erupted, and he did not hold back anymore. Boom! Poochie! There was a loud sound, but after the loud sound, there was a strange sound. Tianyang in front of the white-bearded elder had indeed turned into a cloud of blood mist. But it was the blood mist of a pig that had come out of nowhere. Your eyes are blind. No wonder you're like a fish in water in this dark mountain range. At this moment, another chuckle came. The white-bearded elder's pupils contracted, and he looked up. The figure of a young man stood in the void and walked slowly toward him. You tricked me. The white-bearded elder was burning with anger. He stared at Tianyang as if flames were about to spit out of his eyes. He had prepared countless times and spoke arrogantly. He did not know how superior he was, but he never expected that the person he had been talking to was a pig that Tianyang had caught at some point and used some means to cover up. So what if I tricked you? Tianyang chuckled and put the illusion fiend ancient book back into his body. In the next moment, he took a step forward. You're courting death. After being provoked by Tianyang, the white-bearded elder instantly flew into a rage. With a roar, the scepter in his hand bloomed with rays of light. An emerald pillar of light shot out from the scepter and blasted fiercely at Tianyang. Azure Dragon swallows the sky. The white-bearded elder roared. At this moment, Tianyang took another step forward. He stomped down. Wu Zun's true essence was connected to the peak Wu Zun's primordial spirit, 3 saint paths, and the terrifying power of the embryonic form of the Dragon Emperor's body. It directly crushed the azure dragon swallows the sky that it shot over. Then he stepped on the white-bearded elder's face. Boom! Chapter 1181. Stomped the white-bearded old man to death. Even Tianyang did not expect that 80% of his strength would have such an effect. Even the white-bearded old man, who was a peak half-saint, could not block his kick and was kicked down from the sky. Puffed. Wah! The white-bearded old man fell rapidly from the sky, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. The true yuan of a peak half-saint circulated wildly, trying to expel Tianyang's true yuan and dragon power that had invaded his body. However, the dragon power aside, the body of the Dragon Emperor was only in its embryonic form. How could a peak half-saint expel the true yuan that contained at least 3 saint paths? In the end, it was all in vain. It even provoked the resistance of the energy itself, causing it to rampage within the old man's body, causing him to spit out another mouthful of blood in frustration. Of course, a peak half-saint was still a peak half-saint. Although he was kicked down by Tianyang, his strength was still there. He would not be like Qi Ying Tian, who was beaten into the ground and could not be dug out. Damn it! Damn it! Little bastard, I'm going to tear you to pieces. At this moment, the white-bearded old man finally came to his senses. He looked at Tianyang with eyes full of madness. He was the second elder of the Heavenly Dragon tribe. In the entire Heavenly Dragon tribe, he was ranked at the top except for the Heavenly Dragon Saint. Even the Heavenly Dragon Saint had to be polite when facing him and was unwilling to offend him. However, a human tribe rat had stepped on his face unceremoniously, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. It was a great humiliation. Tear me to pieces? At this moment, Tianyang raised his eyebrows slightly and revealed a slight smile. In the next moment, a slight spatial fluctuation swept across. The back of a long sword slammed toward the white-bearded old man with an unstoppable force. What? Seeing this, the white-bearded old man was so frightened that goosebumps appeared all over his body. His hair stood on end, and his pupils constricted in horror. What kind of speed is this? What kind of power is this? Heavenly Dragon, revolving palm. The white-bearded elder roared angrily. The genuine essence of a peak half-saint condensed. Streams of genuine essence flowed between his hands like a whirlpool. Then, he viciously slapped Tianyang's sword. Although this palm strike had yet to reach the saint martial realm, the white-bearded old man had used it to neutralize countless saint martial realm attacks. To deal with this type, it was the most suitable to deal with a type that relied purely on brute strength without any other techniques or powers. Even if you had the strength of 10 dragons and 10 elephants, most of it would be dissipated in the twinkling of an eye. What was left was naturally nothing to the white-bearded elder, who was at the peak of the half-saint realm. Boom! And right at this moment, the Heavenly Dragon, revolving palm, and Tianyang's palm collided together. The outcome was obvious. Boom! The energy whirlpools did not even move the Great Void Sword embryo at all. They could not even move the Great Void Sword embryo by 1 millimeter. Not to mention taking away the power of this slap and alleviating it. Normally, there were 2 ways to deal with this type of martial technique. The first way was to understand the essence of the martial technique and use a completely reversed method to nullify the martial technique. The second way was to use unparalleled brute strength to destroy the entire battlefield and kill everything in an instant. Tianyang was the second way. How is this possible? The white-bearded elder roared in shock. However, just as he was about to raise his scepter to strike again, there was no time left. Pah! The Great Void Sword embryo's strike was neither up nor down. It hit the white-bearded elder's face squarely. This allowed the white-bearded elder to enjoy flying uncontrollably again and replaced all of his rotten teeth. In an instant, blood mixed with broken teeth spurted out of the white-bearded elder's mouth. The white-bearded elder's face was completely distorted. Little bastard! The Heavenly Dragon tribe lived up to their reputation as one of the 4 overlords of the true dragon's sacred world. Even after being tortured by Tianyang, the white-bearded elders still retained a great deal of combat power. Although the current Tianyang could still defeat a peak sage to be like the white-bearded elder, it would still be difficult for him to kill him. Such experts all had countless trump cards. It was possible to defeat them, but it was much more difficult to kill them. Die! At this moment, the white-bearded elder roared. The scepter in his hand shone with pure white light. In the next instant, it turned into a huge dragon and charged towards Tianyang. Dragon spirit, exterminate! The white-bearded elder roared angrily. The pure white dragon seemed to have a mind of its own as it let out an earth-shattering roar. With an incomparably terrifying aura, it charged viciously at Tianyang. That power, even though Tianyang had cultivated to Wu Zun Realm level 9, he could not help but be moved. A peak sage to be dragon spirit, Tianyang exclaimed. This dragon spirit was actually the spirit of the dragon tribe. There was a fundamental difference between a simulated spirit and a real spirit. One of the differences lay in the origin of the spirit. Not only did this dragon spirit contain the origin of the spirit, but there were also fragments of the primordial spirit. It was obvious that this dragon spirit was refined from the primordial spirit fragments of a peak sage to be true dragon after its death. Seeing this, Tianyang could only be speechless. The heavenly dragon race was truly ruthless. A peak half-sage expert had actually died, and they did not even leave his corpse intact. However, this had nothing to do with Tianyang. He only needed to destroy the dragon spirit in front of him. Roar! The pure white dragon spirit let out an indecipherable roar and charged towards Tianyang with a terrifying destructive power. The destructive power of the dragon spirit was not much weaker than Tianyang's path of life and death. Of course, it was Wu Zun's path of life and death when he was at the peak of the 7th level. Although he did not deliberately cultivate other saint paths during the month of cultivation at the 10,000 Dragon Steel, Tianyang's other saint paths had also improved imperceptibly under that kind of environment. Now, Tianyang only needed to deal with this dragon spirit. Path of life and death, reincarnation of life and death. A terrifying black and white sword light burst out and charged towards the pure white dragon spirit. The power of life and destruction fused into one as if it was born like this. Seeing this, the white-bearded elder immediately let out a scream of disbelief. How is this possible? How could 2 opposing things become one thing? And it was even a saint path. In the next second, the white-bearded elder's 10,000 years of battle experience immediately made him understand that his dragon spirit was no threat in front of Tianyang. Return to the white-bearded elder roared. However, it was too late. Tianyang's sword was never slow. Boom! The pure white dragon spirit instantly exploded. Even though it had already blocked 80% of the power, it could not block the remaining 20%. And the remaining 20%, after defeating the pure white dragon spirit, even slashed the white-bearded elder. A large crack was left on his chest from his shoulder all the way to his waist. Crack. Blood splattered. Chapter 1182. One slash, and he was severely injured. As the speed was too fast, the white-bearded elder did not even have time to react before his chest was slashed open. Just as he was about to speak, blood gushed out from his mouth. He could not speak at all. As for the pure white dragon spirit, it seemed to have the ability to self-repair. Although it was destroyed by Tianyang, there was still a fragment left. This fragment turned into an almost completely transparent small white dragon, circling around the white-bearded old man. At this moment, the white-bearded elder finally realized something. He swallowed the blood in his mouth and roared in disbelief. How did you suddenly become so strong? Although Tianyang was strong and had suppressed him, he definitely hadn't pierced a hole in his chest with a single sword strike and instantly killed his strongest killing move. If Tianyang had revealed such strength from the start, there would be no point in fighting. He would just run back to the true dragon sacred domain. It was because Tianyong was only slightly stronger than the white-bearded elder that the white-bearded elder had the hope of defeating Tianyong. In the end, this hope turned into despair. Now that the white-bearded elder had been severely injured by Tianyong's sudden move, even if he wanted to run, he would not be able to outrun Tianyong. In other words, the second elder of the heavenly dragon tribe, by Jiju, was now a fish on the chopping board. Tianyong only needed to put in some effort to kill him. Because I did not use a sword before. Tianyong chuckled. Reincarnation of life and death was a terrifying move that combined the sage stage sword principle and the Tao of life and death. In terms of power, it was not much weaker than the sword-breaking 9 barons, which was the limit of the sage stage sword principle. This pure white dragon spirit cultivated the Tao of destruction, which was naturally suppressed by the Tao of life and death. That was why it could be killed instantly. However, Tianyong was too lazy to explain the reason to the white-bearded elder. Hearing this, the white-bearded elder's eyes widened. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood. The dragon's aura was extremely weak. With a wave of his hand, Tianyong sent the white-bearded elder flying toward Flowing Sky City. Although he wanted to kill this guy, this white-bearded old man seemed to be some kind of elder of the Heavenly Dragon clan, who knew how many Heavenly Dragon sacred artifacts he had on him. Although Tianyong was not too weak against the Heavenly Dragon Saint himself, if this guy threw out 300 Heavenly Dragon holy power, then Tianyong would have a headache. For the sake of the Red Dragon Saint, he spared this guy's life. As for the white-bearded elder, when he saw Tianyong send him flying like he was throwing trash, he immediately felt unbearable pain. With a cry, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Tianyong flew out of Flowing Sky City. He naturally didn't go to Flowing Sky City to see the Flowing Sky City's city lord and clear rain body Hong Shaochen, who might have cultivated the 9-tempered dragon body. Instead, he asked about Ling Yuhan. Before he left, Tianyong asked the Hong clan to do their best to collect information about Ling Yuhan. After meeting Qi Yingtian and killing him, Tianyong asked the Flowing Sky city lord to help him collect information. Unfortunately, the two forces combined couldn't find any clues, other than the crystal in Tianyong's hand that was formed by the fusion of the 9-tailed moon fox martial soul and a 9-nether saint body. It was as if Ling Yuhan had never appeared in this world. Well, if Yuhan really came and met the West Spirit States bandits, she would probably cultivate in seclusion carefully. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Xintian Great World is much stronger than that of the Tianshao Great World. It's a good choice to cultivate here. Tianyong muttered to himself. If that's the case, it's normal that we can't find her. Then Tianyong raised his head and looked at the sky that was getting closer and closer. At this time, it was already night. Stars dotted the night sky, and a moon that never wavered hung high in the sky. Today, there were 2 moons in the Xintian Great World. It's indeed different from the Tianshao Great World. Tianyong chuckled and then took a step forward. As if something had shattered, Tianyong's body disappeared from the spot. Then, he was surrounded by spatial turbulence. Countless spatial fragments shot toward Tianyong like the sharpest blade in the world. Tianyong chuckled and waved his hand to smooth out the spatial fragments. Back then, when he had just arrived at the Xintian Great World and broken through the world barrier, he encountered the spatial turbulence and was seriously injured. His strength had regressed back to the Heaven Ascension realm. Now, although he was still in the Wuzun realm, the spatial turbulence had no effect on him. As long as Tianyong wanted to, the spatial turbulence around him could be calmed down. Things have remained the same, but people have changed. Tianyong smiled and waved his hand. A force field seemed to appear around him, repelling all the spatial turbulence outside. Tianyong arrived at the edge of the Xintian Great World without any hindrance, where the world barrier was. The Xintian Great world barrier was very ordinary. It was only slightly stronger than the Tianshao Great world barrier. Only the spatial turbulence inside and outside the world barrier was the biggest threat to passing through the world barrier. However, this threat didn't amount to much at all. He took a step forward. He passed through the world barrier. Tianyang's figure suddenly appeared in a starry sky. The two moons in the sky also released an incomparably resplendent light, enveloping the heavenly sun in it. All heaven soared, lead the way. Tianyang smiled and said in his mind as he looked at the stars in the sky that he had not seen for a long time. In the next moment, a torrent of information burst out from all heaven soared and poured into Tianyang's mind. A star map suddenly appeared in Tianyang's mind. At the center was where Shun Tian Wuzuan was, the black underworld soul prison. Looks like it's quite far away. Tianyang looked at the black underworld soul prison that was extremely far away from the Xintian Great World and smiled. Last time, Tianyang had just broken through Wuzun's power and crossed the Star River from the Tianshao Great World to the Xintian Great World. He had already used up half of his power. Now that Tianyang had the power of a half-saint, he could pass through the boundless Star River as he wished. Then let's go. Tianyang smiled and instantly used the boundless 9 transformations to fly in the direction of the black underworld soul prison. Even in this place where there was no air, Tianyang could still pass through unimpeded. This was the power of the boundless 9 transformations. Deep in the starry sky, in the empty starry sky, a huge and towering prison was suspended in the void without anyone to rely on. Streams of demonic aura spread from the prison and dyed the surrounding starry sky with a layer of eerie black and purple. As for the heavenly sun, it was flying rapidly towards the prison. Chapter 1183. I didn't expect you to still be alive after more than 30,000 years. A mocking voice that could not be identified as a man or a woman rang out. In this complete darkness, a trace of black-purple light appeared, faintly illuminating the suppressed man in the depths of the darkness. A sword pierced through the man's chest from the sky and nailed him to the wall. There was also a long spear on each of his 4 limbs, restraining him tightly. This was similar to the method used by the Xinyuan family to suppress Tian Hao. In fact, it was even more brutal. After all, this person was Shun Tian Wuzuan, the man who had fought with the great Lord of Heaven to the death tens of thousands of years ago. He was one of the most powerful people in the human race, Wuzun, and had a 30% chance of winning. Shun Tian Wuzuan's face was covered by his scattered black hair, making it impossible to see his expression. The person who spoke in the darkness did not seem to be coming out. TSK, you are indeed a peerless genius of the human race who has comprehended 3 divine paths. If I had not had the protection of a supreme sage back then, I might not have been able to capture you. The person who spoke sneered, then flicked his finger. The dark purple light dissipated instantly, and a light thorn pierced through Shuntian Wuzuan's right palm. Fresh blood flowed out, still bright red and full of vitality. Even though he had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years and his cultivation had not improved at all, Shuntian Wuzuan was still alive. The great Lord of Heaven, even if you have suppressed me for 30,000 years. So what if you have suppressed me for 300,000 years? Shuntian Wuzuan spoke at this moment. His voice was slightly dry, but it was still difficult to conceal the spirit in his voice when he was at his peak. I'm afraid you won't be able to break the sword that I gave you back then, even if you were given another 30,000 years. Shuntian Wuzuan's face, which was hidden behind his long hair, revealed a mocking smile and chuckled lightly. Hearing that, the expression of the person who had spoken, demon exalted heaven, transforming demon exalted, sank. Then, a mocking smile appeared on his face. Do you think that I can carry your sword forever just because even a saint can't do anything to it? Great saints of the demon race aren't to be trifled with. Right now, I'm afraid that I've profited from this disaster. My strength has already advanced by leaps and bounds. The great Lord of Heaven laughed disdainfully. Upon hearing this, Shuntian Wuzuan's pupils suddenly contracted. Back then, the great Lord of Heaven was able to fight Shuntian Wuzuan, who had 3 divine paths, to a draw using various means. Coupled with the power of a great sage, he was able to defeat Shuntian Wuzuan in one fell swoop. He had thought that after that battle, The great Lord of Heaven would be forever troubled by his injuries and unable to improve his cultivation. Who would have thought that a great saint of the demon race would actually heal the great Lord of Heaven? Back then, the great Lord of Heaven was already so powerful. Now, after more than 30,000 years, his injuries had healed and his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. That strength, what kind of realm did it reach? TSK. As expected, the surroundings of the Black Underworld Soul Prison are either pure planets without life or worlds completely ruled by the demon race. Although the distance was incomparably far, after more than 10 days, Tianyang finally arrived at the Black Underworld Soul Prison from the Shintian Great World. Tens of millions of miles around. This was the only world with life around the Black Underworld Soul Prison. Naturally, Tianyang's first stop to rescue Shintian Wuzuan was here. Plunging headfirst into the Black Underworld Soul Prison like a retard would only lead to death. Tianyang didn't want to die so stupidly. Just as Tianyang approached the Black Underworld Soul Prison, the All Heavens swords immediately began to rampage. Brilliant runes bloomed on the ancient sword. Even though it was heavily damaged and no longer had the glory of a holy artifact, it was still incomparably powerful. However, it was still so powerful that Heavenly Sun almost failed to block it. He knew that this was the excitement of the spirit of the All Heavens sword as it approached its master. There's no time to lose. Tianyang's face darkened. The power of his nascent spirit had been tempered by various fortuitous encounters. At this moment, his cultivation level was still that of a peak Wuzun. However, in terms of strength, he was much stronger than a peak Wuzun. He could sense it through the All Heavens sword. Shintian Wuzuan's current situation wasn't good. It was much worse than the last time he sensed it. In the next moment, Tianyang looked at the great world in front of him that was covered in demonic qi. His expression darkened as he transformed into a ray of light and charged in. The world barrier was weaker than the Tianshao Great World and the Shintian Great World, but Tianyang, a 9th stage Wuzun, easily passed through it without leaving a trace. Tui, what the hell is this place? As soon as he passed through the world barrier and arrived in this gloomy and dark world, Tianyang almost vomited out the dinner he had last month. The Phantom Fiend ancient book in the Vientiane Sky Market was already unbearable. The Blood Sea in the Tianshao Great World made him want nothing more than to destroy it. This entire world made him want to die on the spot. Demonic Qi was only useful against the demons, demonized creatures, and the Heaven's Sword. To other cultivators, demonic Qi was no different from a poisonous gas. And now, the world that Tianyang had stepped into, the entire world, was filled with this poisonous gas. Heaven's Sword, Tianyang growled. The Heaven's Sword martial spirit was instantly activated. Tianyang's body formed a devouring layer that devoured all the demonic qi that approached Tianyang. If not for this, the terrifying demonic qi alone would have been enough to make Tianyang suffer, let alone do anything else. No wonder this world, as a demon world, doesn't have a world barrier to protect it. In this environment, anyone below the half-saint level is almost certain to die. Tianyang took a deep breath. Then, he chose a direction and rushed toward it. He didn't come to this world to wander around. He came to obtain information about the Black Underworld Soul Prison. Tianyang's expression changed slightly. The power of his primordial spirit spread out. In an instant, he saw through everything within 1,000 miles. Even a monstrous demonic qi couldn't resist the power of Tianyang's primordial spirit. There are still cities in this world. Tianyang revealed a look of surprise. Although he had sensed the presence of life in this world outside the world barrier, Tianyang had already sensed the existence of life. However, Tianyang only thought that they were just some guardians. But now, it seemed that the demons had left a considerable number of demons in this small world. Interesting, Tianyang smiled slightly. The next moment, the power of his primordial spirit covered his body. Suddenly, an illusory demon ancient book appeared in his hand. Tianyang's appearance changed instantly. Originally, Tianyang was wearing a white robe. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was extremely handsome. At first glance, one could tell that he wasn't a demon with a strange appearance. But now, Tianyang was disguised by the illusory demon Ancient Book and instantly turned into a human-shaped illusory demon. His skin was dark, and he wore a purple robe. He looked ordinary. He was a living, illusory demon. This world is called the Demon Star. Chapter 1184. Heavenly Sun revealed a look of surprise as he sized up his surroundings. Compared to when he'd first entered Planet Fiend, his appearance had changed again. The Phantom Fiend Ancient Book only contained some superficial knowledge of the demon race. Tianyang's disguise might have been a standard Phantom Fiend to the Xiantian Great World, but to the various demons on Planet Fiend, it was full of flaws. Therefore, before Tianyang came to this city, he'd found a third-level demon, Sovereign Wu Zun, and killed him. He'd searched his soul and altered his appearance again. He'd also learned the basic language of the demon race. At the same time, he'd also obtained a lot of currency used on Planet Fiend. This was the largest city within 1,000 miles from where he'd sensed it. It was also one of the largest cities on Planet Fiend, according to the information he'd received. Demons of all shapes and sizes came and went on the road. It was like a random city in the human world. Perhaps to the demon race, they were civilized and orderly. But to other races, the demon race's image was one of invasion and destruction. This city is called Ancient Nether City. Was it founded by the demon saint? Tianyang's primordial spirit scanned the city and read the history engraved on the city gate. He was surprised. Planet Fiend wasn't a world that relied on the black underworld soul prison. Was it a real demon race world? No wonder the surrounding space was so strange. Even if he was billions of miles away, he still couldn't see a trace of a second world. It turned out that this place had left the domain of the human race and entered the demon race's world. Generally speaking, there were two camps in all the realms. One was the Xiantian Great World and the Tianshao Great World. Led by the human race, there were all kinds of races that used the spiritual energy of heaven and earth as the foundation for cultivation. The other was the Planet Fiend, completely ruled by the demon race and using demonic energy as the foundation for cultivation. There were many other scattered worlds, but they were too scattered and couldn't be united. That was why they weren't mentioned. Tianyang hadn't expected to arrive at the demon race's world so quickly. There are quite a lot of treasures on this fiend star. Walking along the road, Tianyang's eyebrows suddenly shot up as he sensed a nearby roadside stall. The glowing stones released a profound and strange aura. Roadside stalls were different for shops. The threshold for shops was undoubtedly higher. As for roadside stalls, there was nothing. Because this roadside stall had so many strange stones, it was also surrounded by many demons. Tianyang executed the Heavenly Expanse 9 transformations, and like a fish in water, he easily passed through the crowd and arrived in front of the roadside stall. Behind the roadside stall sat an old man in a tattered gray robe that revealed his dark red skin. His white hair was messily scattered, and he looked extremely old and miserable. Tianyang was not interested in the stall owner, but he was interested in the stones. However, after a glance, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. Fire bone crystal. At this time, the roadside stall owner suddenly raised his head and revealed a mouthful of yellow teeth. Fire bone crystal. Hearing this, some of the demons who were here to join in the fun were shocked. How could you have the fire bone crystal? The fire bone crystal was a treasure of heaven and earth that could only be formed when the bones of the fire demon of Wu Zun's 4th stage crystallized by chance after its death. The fire demon's attack power was the strongest other than the top races in the demon race. The fire bone crystal that contained the life essence of the fire demon was naturally extraordinary. Even if it was used as a bomb, it was much more powerful than ordinary treasures. However, it was extremely difficult to form the fire bone crystal. It would only appear in places where the death aura gathered, and the fire demon's corpse must not be destroyed and its energy not dispersed before it could form the fire bone crystal. It was even more difficult to obtain it. Once the fire bone crystal was formed, everything around it would become a place where the death aura and the fire demon's energy gathered. Usually, there would be nothing. However, once there was a surge of demonic chi, the death aura and the fire demon's energy would be ignited by the demonic chi and explode the demon to death. Its power was extraordinary, and it was extremely difficult to obtain. Therefore, the firebone crystal was extremely valuable. How could there be a few hundred pieces of firebone crystal in this stall? Wouldn't it be better to sell them to the merchants and factions? Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? Hearing this, the stall owner was instantly displeased. I spent a lot of effort to dig these firebone crystals out of the buried mountain range. Can't you see for yourself whether they are firebone crystals or not? Buy if you want to buy them, then scram. I'm not begging you. The stall owner shouted angrily. Hearing this, the man who had questioned him earlier was instantly displeased. Old man, what are you talking about? In the next instant, a wave of scorching fire exploded from the man's body. The originally ordinary-looking man in human form had turned into a 3-meter giant made of black lava. I am a fire demon. The lava giant snorted coldly. In the next instant, he reached out his hand and attacked the stall owner. However, the stall owner's expression did not change. His eyes under his sloppy white hair revealed a trace of disdain. You're only at the 9th level of Heaven Ascension realm, and you're here to judge? I, your grandfather, have dug up more fire demons' graves than you have seen. In the next instant, a light flashed across the stall owner's eyes. Instantly, the surrounding space began to tremble violently. Wuzun's 9th level aura was released. Everyone stopped. At this moment, a cold snort came from the side. In the next instant, 2 beams of light shot out from the same source, hitting the stall owner and the man respectively. Both of them spat out blood at the same time, revealing a trace of shock. The stall owner was fine, only spitting out a mouthful of blood. However, the man was forcefully beaten back to his original form, and his entire person was sent flying. Who dares to make a move with me here? In the next instant, the crowd automatically parted to form a path, and a luxuriously dressed youth sneered coldly as he mocked. The youth was wearing a luxurious black robe. His skin was fair, and his face was handsome. He looked much more handsome than Chun Bufan, Wu Qingchun, and Qi Yingtian, whom Tianyang had met before. He was tall, but did not exceed the standards of the human race. His limbs were similar to an ordinary human's. If it were not for his dark purple eyes, which seemed to be carved with demonic patterns, one would not be able to tell that he was a demon. Is that the second young master of Bloodspring Mountain? Why is he in ancient Nether City? I heard that Bloodspring Mountain and ancient Nether City have dealings. It's normal for him to appear here. However, the second young master of Bloodspring Mountain has always been domineering. These fire bone crystals. Who's domineering? Before the crowd could start discussing, the purple-eyed youth showed a trace of impatience and looked toward the source of the voice. Then, he recognized the person who had spoken and pointed at him. Boom! The rank 6 martial honorable realm's true essence exploded, and instantly, that person was thrown a few hundred meters away. That's right. I'm domineering. Do I need you to repeat it? The purple-eyed youth sneered, and a trace of disdain appeared on his face as he looked at the surrounding demons, who were all silent like cicadas in winter. A bunch of trash. None of them dared to go against him. Then, old man, these things, I'll take them all. Chapter 1185. I'll take them all. The purple-eyed young man said disdainfully, as if what was in front of him were not priceless flaming bone crystals, but a pile of useless gems and stones. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and reveal a shocked expression. No wonder he was the most arrogant and prodigal second young master of Bloody Spring Mountain. Perhaps some of the flaming bone crystals were real. However, most of them had yet to be identified. What if the stall owner mixed the real, flaming bone crystals into a pile of broken stones and escaped with the treasures? Given the size of the demonic star, where could he hide? However, the second young master had just opened his mouth and bought the whole place. It would cost at least 100 million demonic stones. All of them. The stall owner did not seem to have reacted. He was in a daze, as if he had heard something unbelievable. It was said that the second young master of Bloody Spring Mountain was arrogant and did not care about the family's property. Now, it seemed that the description was too small. However, the stall owner immediately shuddered. He did not care about the fact that he had been beaten up by the purple-eyed young man. He hurriedly took out a brand-new space bag and wanted to keep everything on the stall. However, at this moment, Tianyong suddenly spoke. Wait! Hearing that, everyone was stunned. The second young master of Bloody Spring Mountain had already spoken. Why was there still someone stopping the stall owner? Did he not know that his words were a slap to the second young master of Bloody Spring Mountain's face? However, Tianyong did not care. He looked indifferent as he stared at an inconspicuous small stone beside the countless shining stones. Compared to the pile of dazzling flaming bone crystals beside him, this stone was dull in color. It did not look impressive and did not reveal any aura. It looked like a stone that had rolled over from the side of the road. However, Tianyong's primordial spirit sensed that the aura of this broken stone was more intense than the surrounding flaming bone crystals. The reason why Tianyong was surprised was because of this stone. However, Tianyong's subconscious words attracted the purple-eyed young man's attention. The purple-eyed young man's face darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the next moment, he opened his mouth. A flying sword shot out. Unlike the young masters of the human race, the young masters of the demon race didn't say anything like, "You don't know who I am." The moment they opened their mouths, they threw out a fatal flying sword. Bang! However, to the surprise of the purple-eyed young man, his flying sword was casually blocked by Tianyong and fell to the ground. From the looks of it, Tianyong was unharmed. When did the Huanma become so strong? Tianyong's appearance was that of an illusion demon. This was also the reason why the purple-eyed youth looked down on Tianyong. It was true that the illusion demon race was huge, but there weren't any strong illusion demon forces in ancient Yu City. Even if there were, would they be able to contend with the Blood Spring Mountain, the only force within 1,000,000 miles of Fongjingji that had a peak half-step Devil Saint? A peak half-step Devil Saint was the most powerful combat force on the Devil Star. Interesting. However, since you dare to offend me, no matter how interesting you are, you have to die. The purple-eyed young man snorted coldly. In the next moment, devil inscriptions bloomed in his eyes. Then, two strange light beams shot out towards Tianyong's head. The Huanma's aura was at the peak of Wu Zun's LV5 realm. He was at the peak of Wu Zun's LV6 realm. Wouldn't it be easy for him to kill a Huanma who is seeking death? Are the people of Blood Spring Mountain so impetuous now? At this moment, Tianyong spoke indifferently. His voice was slightly different from before. It was heavier and deeper. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. How could the Blood Spring Mountain be so judgmental? Where did this Huanma come from? In the next moment, Tianyong moved. A terrifying demonic hand that covered the sky instantly condensed. In the next moment, an infinite amount of Huanma's power condensed on the demonic hand and slammed it towards the purple-eyed young man. No matter how weak Tianyong was, he was still a Wu Zun's LV9 realm existence. How much strength did he need to use to deal with a Wu Zun's LV6 realm young master of the demon clan? It was just a pure condensation of true origin that caused the purple-eyed young man to spit out blood. As for the two light beams that shot out from the purple-eyed young man's eyes, they dissipated at this moment. They did not even hurt Tianyong at all. Tianyong's attack was not too heavy. The purple-eyed young man only spat out a mouthful of blood before he came to his senses. His eyes were burning with hatred. In the next moment, he pounced towards Tianyong. Rays of bright purple demonic light shone on the purple-eyed young man's body. Billowing blood waves. The purple-eyed young man roared. Demonic chi gathered, and the blood and purple light mixed together to form a terrifying palm print that charged towards Tianyong. Although the level of the demonic chi was still at the peak of Wu Zun's LV6 realm, this terrifying power was not much weaker than the LV7 Wu Zun that Tianyong had encountered, still courting death. At this moment, a vicious aura flashed in Tianyong's eyes as he struck out with his palm. The divine wilderness heaven spirit art circulated violently. The illusory fiend ancient book also spewed out boundless power. With a terrifying physical strength, the palm struck the purple-eyed young man. Crack! The purple-red palm print formed by the purple-eyed young man instantly collapsed. Tianyang's palm struck the purple-eyed young man's head without any deviation. The left side of the purple-eyed young man's face instantly exploded. Blood and flesh fragments mixed together and splattered in all directions. The purple-eyed young man was also stunned. He was the second young master of Blood Spring Mountain. To be able to condescend to this roadside stall and compete with this group of lowly weeds for the firebone crystals was already considered his good fortune. This reckless illusory fiend still dared to obstruct him and even sent him flying with a slap? I want you to die! The purple-eyed young man roared angrily. He used his demonic chi to quickly seal the wound and then charged towards Tianyang again. Second young master, you can't. At this moment, the old servant who had been watching from afar rushed out and held the purple-eyed young man back. Ingu, if you continue to obstruct me, the first thing I'll do when I return will be to have my father slaughter you and feed you to the dogs. The purple-eyed young man roared angrily. However, the old servant still did not let go. Wu Zun's peak LV7 realm aura was released and sealed the purple-eyed young man's resistance. Second young master, this illusory fiend is so powerful, and he appeared in ancient Nether City at this time. It's very likely that he's from the Illusory Fiend Palace. Illusory Fiend Palace. These three words were like a heavy hammer that fiercely hammered on everyone's hearts. Countless people trembled. Even the purple-eyed young man revealed a trace of disbelief as he stared at Tianyang. Tianyang's expression was still indifferent. The powerful illusory fiend palace's power and the powerful strength that erupted from before represented Tianyang's terrifying identity. Illusory fiends were experts in illusions. However, this person's combat strength was already so terrifying. How strong was his illusions? It was very likely that he was from the illusory fiend palace. Blind as a bat, Tianyang sneered. Then, as if the purple-eyed young man was air, he turned around and looked at the stall owner. At this moment, the stall owner was already trembling in fear from the confrontation between Blood Spring Mountain and the illusory fiend palace. When he saw Tianyang looking at him, he was instantly speechless. I want this half, Tianyang said arrogantly as he looked down at the stall owner. The stall owner's body trembled. He did not care about the purple-eyed young man's request and hurriedly packed up the half that Tianyang had chosen. Chapter 1186. After putting away the space bag that was more than half of what Tianyang had said, Tianyang nodded slightly. His face was expressionless. Tianyang did not care about these flaming bone crystals. After all, no matter how powerful a fiery demon was, it would lose a lot of its energy after death. The aura of these flaming bone crystals was estimated to be at Wu Zun Realm Level 8. Tianyang could easily destroy a lot of them with his true flame of destruction. However, when a number of flaming bone crystals increased, the power that could be unleashed from them would be considerable. Lord Envoy of the Palace of the Illusory God, seeing that Tianyang was about to leave after throwing out some devil stones, the old servant who had shocked the purple-eyed youth immediately came forward. His face was full of panic and fear. He was afraid that once the palace of the illusory god left, his Blood Spring Mountain would be annihilated. After all, the illusory god palace was the strongest force of the illusory demon clan that spanned across countless worlds of the demon clan. Even though the palace of the illusory god on the demonic planet was not valued by the palace of the illusory god, its strength was still very strong. The strongest person on the demonic planet was a peak half-step demon saint. Although there was one in the Blood Spring Mountain, he was already old. The palace of the illusory god had 5 of them. Any one of them could set up a terrifying illusion that covered thousands of miles. Even a peak half-step demon, saint like Wu Zun, might not be able to escape from it. The old servant even felt that he had fallen into the illusion of the palace of the illusory god in front of him. Everything that he saw was just his own illusion. The Tao of illusion was mysterious and unpredictable. For those who had cultivated the Tao of illusion to the point of perfection, it was not difficult for them to make their opponent fall into layers of illusion with just a glance. However, Tianyong did not know how to do that. Although he had the advanced, illusory demon ancient book that he had obtained from the Vientiane Sky ruins, it was only a broken book. It was fine as a surprise attack, but if Tianyong really used the illusion to fight, even a level 5 Wuzun would be able to sense that something was wrong. What is it? Tianyong's pace did not slow down at all, and his voice was emotionless, as if he was talking to the air. In fact, Tianyong was indeed talking to the air. However, in the eyes of the old servant, Tianyong's attitude was what an envoy of the illusory God Palace should have. Unfathomable, killing people in a fit of rage, his strength was sky-high. They came from a power that was much weaker than the palace of the illusory god, and they had even offended this person. The fact that the palace of the illusory god's Lord Emissary didn't kill the two of them was already very kind. I wonder if Lord Envoy of the illusory god palace is willing to come to my Bloodspring Mountain as a guest, the old servant said in a low voice. At the same time, a bloody dagger appeared in his hand. Naturally, it wasn't to assassinate Tianyong. Even if this old servant was given 180 times more courage, he still wouldn't dare to make a move against an emissary of the illusory god palace. Even if it was a fake emissary, this dagger was naturally this treasure. Tianyong casually glanced at the dagger, which was shining with a scarlet light. His expression didn't change at all, but his heart was slightly shocked. This dagger actually had the power of a half-saint weapon, although it was covered in layers of demonic chi, which was like a bomb that could explode at any time to the people of the mysterious sky great world. Tianyong could use both demonic chi and spiritual chi. After all, no matter how strong the demonic chi was, it would still be devoured by the heavenly sword. Not interested, Tianyong said indifferently. Not to mention that this dagger was useless to a sword cultivator like him. Even if it was, Tianyong wouldn't agree. He was now an emissary of the palace of the illusory god. Before he thought of killing these two people, he couldn't throw away this identity for even a moment. Tianyong had a premonition that if he wanted to find clues about the black underworld soul prison, this identity of the palace of the illusory god, which had been misunderstood by the master and servant of Bloodspring Mountain, would be extremely important. Hearing this, the old servant was stunned. This was a half-saint demon dagger that had been given to the purple-eyed youth by the master of Bloodspring Mountain, which had been tainted with the aura of a demon saint. This treasure was rare, even in the entire demonic star. The old servant was reluctant to take it out in order to win over this emissary of the palace of the illusory god, who had suddenly appeared and had a grudge with them. There were no eternal enemies, only eternal benefits. In the old servant's opinion, even if the purple-eyed youth had offended the emissary and been seriously injured, so what? As long as there were enough benefits, what kind of demon couldn't be turned into a friend? However, what shocked the old servant was that even a half-saint demon dagger couldn't hurt the emissary of the palace of the illusory god. I have no interest in your Bloodspring Mountain. At this time, Tianyong spoke very slowly. Even if he had killed a demon sovereign and learned the language of the demon clan through soul-searching, it was still difficult for him to use it. Helplessly, he had to speak slowly. Otherwise, if the emissary of the palace of the illusory god couldn't even speak a sentence, how could he still pretend? However, Tianyong's manner of speaking was imagined by the old servant as the emissary of the palace of the illusory god. He didn't dare to relax and looked at Tianyong expectantly, waiting for his response. I know why you're looking for me, so you'd better get lost. You're not worthy of my attack. Tianyong said lightly, then took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared in front of the purple-eyed youth and the old servant. At this time, the purple-eyed youth who had been silent all this time widened his eyes, revealing a trace of disbelief. At the moment when Tianyong's figure disappeared, neither the purple-eyed youth nor the old servant noticed the slightest fluctuation in space. It was as if Tianyong had really evaporated into thin air. Otherwise, even if his speed was extremely fast, there would still be some fluctuations in space. This power, could it be that the emissary of the palace of the illusory god has cultivated to the level of a half-step demon saint? The purple-eyed youth said in disbelief. Unknowingly, the way he addressed Tianyang had changed. The demon clan was more violent and direct than the other clans. At the same time, the law of the jungle was even more obvious in the demon planet, which was ruled by the demon clan. Previously, the purple-eyed youth was so powerful that no one dared to respond to him. This was the law of the jungle, with a strong preyed on the weak. Now, Tianyang, as the emissary of the palace of the illusory god, had the strength to crush them. The purple-eyed youth could only bow down to him. At this time, Tianyang casually came to a place outside the ancient Nether City. The density of the demon chi here wasn't too high. In other words, Tianyang could also cultivate here. Or, Chapter 1187, Demon Soul Crystal. Even in Shun Tian Wuzuan's cultivation memories, the records of this treasure were vague and vague. However, in the records of the Heaven's Expanse Temple, it was different. The Demon Soul Crystal was many times more powerful and precious than the Firebone Crystal. One might not even be able to find a Demon Clan treasure, even after searching through countless Demon Clan worlds. Its effect was similar to the Firebone Crystal. However, this Demon Soul Crystal was condensed from the essence of at least a half-step demon Saint Huanma after its death. For ordinary cultivators, be it human or demon, they could use in illusions. For a Huanma, it was a most precious inheritance. The Demon Soul Crystal contained the power of a half-step demon Saint Huanma, or even a half-step demon Saint Huanma. However, for a Huanma, the most important thing was the basic Huanma power. If one could obtain the Huanma power of a half-step demon Saint Huanma, for an ordinary Huanma, it would be like reaching the heavens in a single step. Even Heavenly Sun wouldn't use it on an illusion all at once. Tianyang was not a Huanma, nor did he cultivate the way of illusion. This Demon Soul Crystal was not very useful to Tianyang. However, it was useless to Tianyang, but it did not mean that it was useless to Tianyang's treasure. The Huanma Ancient Book was condensed from a Huanma's lifetime cultivation. It was similar to the Demon Soul Crystal. However, the Huanma Ancient Book was condensed when the Huanma was alive, while the Demon Soul Crystal was condensed after death. Although the conditions for the two were completely different, or even opposite, they could be combined perfectly. If I can merge it with the Huanma Ancient Book, I can disguise myself as a messenger of the illusory God Palace better. Tianyang's lips curled up slightly. In the next moment, the true flames of destruction suddenly burned. The gray broken stone was also engulfed by the true flames of destruction, and was surrounded by raging flames. Crack! Crack! Cracks suddenly appeared on the surface of the gray and gloomy stone, and a ghostly purple light was released from the cracks. The Devil Soul Crystal was at least a half-step Devil Saint. However, it did not mean that all Devil Soul Crystals were condensed from half-step Devil Saint's illusory devil. This aura, it's actually a peak half-step Devil Saint. Tianyang raised his eyebrows and revealed a trace of surprise. It was already a great opportunity for him to be able to choose this Demon Soul Crystal that was similar to a roadside stone from a group of Firebone Crystals. Even if it was an incomplete version, Tianyang could still accept it. But it turned out to be a complete version condensed by a peak half-step Archdevil Saint. It was just like when you wanted to buy a brick, the shop owner not only gave you a diamond brick, but also 8 rams. Not bad, not bad. Tianyang smiled and controlled the true flames of destruction to further refine it. At the same time, Tianyang's mind moved, and the illusory Devil Ancient Book appeared below the Devil Soul Crystal. The illusory devil power that escaped from the purple light was instantly devoured by the illusory Devil Ancient Book. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled. This was not bad. With the burning of the true flames of destruction, the outer layer of the Demon Soul Crystal that was wrapped in the hard stone shell gradually faded, revealing the deep purple crystal that was so dark that it was almost black. The Firebone Crystal at the side should have been more dazzling than the Devil Soul Crystal. However, The Devil Soul Crystal seemed to have a strange suction force that attracted Tianyang's gaze. If Tianyang did not know the origin of the Devil Soul Crystal and had the illusory Devil Ancient Book that was constantly devouring the illusory devil power of the Devil Soul Crystal, Tianyang might have fallen into the trap of the Devil Soul Crystal. What? A messenger of the illusory Devil Palace. Just as Tianyang was focused on refining the outer layer of the Devil Soul Crystal and integrating it into the illusory Devil Ancient Book. In the City Lord's mansion at the center of Ancient Spectre City, Bloodspring Mountain had come to Ancient Spectre City to join forces with the City Lord's mansion. Therefore, they were staying in the City Lord's mansion. That's right, third uncle. The illusory devil aura on Lord Envoy is extremely real. Even the old man who is proficient in sensing auras couldn't detect any mistakes. The purple-eyed youth that had been casually killed by Tianyang bowed slightly to a middle-aged man and said, the middle-aged man was the same as the purple-eyed youth. His eyes were deep purple and had demonic runes. However, compared to the purple-eyed youth, the middle-aged man's purple was deeper, but the number of demonic runes was far less than the purple-eyed youth's. He was also inferior to the purple-eyed youth, who was rumored to have been accepted as a disciple by the terrifying existence at the center of the Devil Transformation Star. Even Ingu couldn't tell. Hearing this, the middle-aged man was slightly taken aback and looked at the old servant who had been silent all this time. The middle-aged man was still somewhat suspicious of the purple-eyed youth's words. After all, this fellow's naughtiness and lawlessness were obvious to all. It wasn't impossible for him to make up a lie to play with his third uncle. After all, why would a dignified envoy of the illusory god palace come to a roadside stall to buy something? That's right. At this time, the old servant spoke. At that time, the young master and I were at that roadside stall wanting to buy firebone crystals. Because the young master was rather straightforward, it seemed to have caused the envoy of the illusory god palace to be dissatisfied. He directly attacked and sent the second young master flying. As for what happened next, the second young master attacked again, but he was stopped by the old servant. That is what you know, the old servant said. Hearing this, the middle-aged man faintly nodded. Even Ingu couldn't tell. It seemed that the envoy of the illusory god palace was real. However, you say that he's young, but there are many old monsters that can regain their youthful appearance. I don't know if he's really young or not. The middle-aged man sighed. Hearing this, the purple-eyed youth was speechless, and the old servant was silent. Tianyang had directly attacked. Who knew if he was young or not? We still know too little about the illusory god palace. We don't know what's going on. Big Brother told you to pay attention to the illusory god palace so that you wouldn't provoke that colossus. Who knew that you would go on a rampage, and even rampage over the envoy of the illusory god palace? Said the middle-aged man. Hearing this, the purple-eyed youth's expression slightly changed. At this time, the old servant suddenly spoke with a trembling voice. How about we set up a banquet and invite the envoy of the illusory god palace to make up for our mistakes and improve our relationship? Chapter 1188. A Gathering of Geniuses? Tianyang raised his eyebrows as he looked at the purple-eyed young man, who seemed to have used his fastest speed to run from the center of ancient U City to this small cave in the middle of nowhere thousands of miles away from ancient U City. Just a second ago, he had a grudge with this guy, and he had to use his identity as a messenger of the palace of the illusory god to suppress him. Why did this guy run over in the next second and shamelessly invite him to some gathering of geniuses? That's right. The purple-eyed young man saw the slight change in Tianyang's expression and immediately calmed down. He was afraid that Tianyang would not be interested and directly kill him, so he hurriedly explained. It's just a small banquet in ancient Nether City. It won't take too long. Only the City Lord of ancient Nether City, the third elder of my Bloodspring Mountain, and the geniuses of the various factions in ancient Nether City will come. Lord Messenger, you're not going as one of the geniuses attending the gathering. You only need to go with my third uncle and the city master of ancient U City. If it weren't for Tianyang's excellent hearing, he wouldn't have been able to make out what the purple-eyed youth was saying. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. However, hearing this, Tianyong fell into deep thought. He had only one goal in coming to Demonic Planet, and that was to find information about the Black Abyss Soul Prison and rescue Shintian Wuzuan. The Black Abyss Soul Prison was less than 30 million miles above his head. With the All-Heaven Sword and Shintian Wuzuan's connection, he did not have to worry about Shintian Wuzuan's safety for the time being. However, he had to consider the strength of the Great Lord of Heaven. The more time he wasted, the more likely it was that the Great Lord of Heaven would break through and become stronger. If Tianyong wanted to rescue Shintian Wuzuan, the more difficult it would be for him to do so. Information about the Black Abyss Soul Prison was definitely not something that could be found in a random street stall. Even if Demonic Planet had an organization like the Heaven's Secret Sect in Sky Continent, Tianyong was just an outsider. Heavenly Sun was just a visitor from another world, and his identity as an envoy of the illusory God Palace was something he made up. Naturally, they wouldn't provide information to a nobody like him. The fastest way was also the most likely way. That was to get information from the city master of Ancient U City or the higher-ups of Bloodspring Mountain. However, Tianyong was so deep that he forgot to control of the illusory demon ancient book, and his expression gradually stiffened. The violet-eyed young man was instantly terrified to the extreme when he saw this, and he was deeply afraid that he'd offended this lord before him, causing him to speak hastily. Lord Messenger, you don't have to come. You, the purple-eyed young man, the purple-eyed young man said. The purple-eyed youth said. His last sentence was just an addition. Tianyong's expression was already so terrifying. How could he possibly agree? Demon sword? Tianyong had studied the origin of the Great Void Sword embryo before, but he did not find anything. Even from the other fragment of the Great Void Sword embryo, Lord Gu Hua, he came up with a wrong answer. He had thought that the Great Void Sword embryo was made by the Jiu Yu Saint Emperor. However, the little golden girl did not recognize the aura of the Great Void Sword embryo, nor the forging method. The Jiu Yu Saint Emperor's forging method was learned from the Heaven's Expanse Temple. If the little golden girl did not recognize it, how could it be his? However, there was one thing that he was sure of. The Great Void Sword embryo was not picky about food. As long as it was of a high grade, it could swallow any treasure. The demon sword was no exception. The city master of Ancient U City, Tianyong suddenly spoke, his expression still indifferent. Then, there's no harm in going. Hearing this, the purple-eyed young man, who thought that Tianyong would refuse, was stunned. Then, he revealed an extremely happy expression. Then, this is the invitation. Lord Messenger, you must come. It's tomorrow. The purple-eyed young man said excitedly. He took out a dark gold invitation and bowed respectfully, handing it to Tianyong with both hands. Hearing this, Tianyong's expression did not change at all. He calmly kept the invitation into a space bag and waved his hand. The purple-eyed young man's body was sent out of the cave. The purple-eyed young man did not seem to realize that he was no longer in the cave until 3 minutes later. He immediately sighed. The Lord Messenger of the Palace of the Illusory God is really terrifying. I actually did not realize it at all. The purple-eyed young man sighed. The Palace of the Illusory God was indeed an expert of the Palace of the Illusory God. Even his third uncle would not be able to match up to this level of power. However, the demon chi here is so thin that it's scary. The Lord Messenger of the Palace of the Illusory God is not staying in Ancient U City, but in this godforsaken place? How mysterious. Could it be that the Lord Messenger is going through some kind of tough training? The purple-eyed young man sighed. Then, he flew into the air and quickly flew towards Ancient U City. He had to quickly tell his third uncle, the third elder of Bloodspring Mountain, that the Lord Messenger of the Palace of the Illusory God had agreed to come. You're saying that the Lord Messenger of the Palace of the Illusory God appeared in Ancient U City because he contacted someone from Bloodspring Mountain? In the ancient Nether City, 1 out of every 10 people was from the City Lord estate. Therefore, in less than half a day, the news was sent to the City Lord of Ancient U City. Hearing this, the city lord of ancient City fell into deep thought. The Lord Messenger of the palace of the illusory god was about to come to ancient City. This was news that everyone knew. Wu Zun was above the 5th rank of the illusory god realm and lived near ancient City. However, although ancient City was huge, it was just a tiny ant in front of the palace of the illusory god. The news had only been sent out for half a month, and the Lord Messenger was already here? Could it be that this deal was more important to the palace of the illusory god than he had imagined? However, the Lord Messenger of the palace of the illusory god had contacted Blood Spring Mountain first and ignored the City Lord estate. This made the City Lord of ancient City very confused. Oh well, according to the news, the Lord Messenger of the palace of the illusory god seems to want to participate in tomorrow's gathering. Coincidentally, the useless 3rd Elder of Blood Spring Mountain will also be going. Then I'll go too. Although he couldn't see through the Lord Messenger of the palace of the illusory god, the City Lord of ancient City had to take the Lord Messenger of the palace of the illusory god seriously. Otherwise, even though ancient City was big, it could be destroyed with a flick of a finger in front of the palace of the illusory god. Make preparations. The gathering will be held at the City Lord estate. Tell Blood Spring Mountain not to be busy, the City Lord of ancient City said. Hearing this, the person who sent the news lowered his head. Yes. The next day, Chapter 1189, Ancient Nether City Mountain Forest Restaurant. This was the largest and most famous restaurant in the entire ancient Nether City. It was a place that catered to peak experts like Wu Zun and even half-step demonic saints. After all, the entire Mountain Forest Restaurant was a force in the demonic star. In the ancient Nether City, the Mountain Forest Restaurant was second only to the City Lord's mansion and other families. No banquet? Did the banquet change location? At this moment, Tianyang was standing at the entrance of the Mountain Forest Restaurant. He was holding the dark gold invitation that the purple-eyed young man had given him personally. Hearing this, the middle-aged man who seemed to have a high status at the entrance of the Mountain Forest Restaurant revealed a look of pity as he looked at Tianyang. Tianyang's clothes were ordinary. In order to better blend into the demonic star, Tianyang had purposely imitated the clothes on his body. However, it was also the most ordinary. In addition to Tianyang's ordinary face, the manager of the Mountain Forest Restaurant who had explained the situation to many people who were attending the banquet felt pity for him. As early as yesterday evening, the City Lord's mansion had announced that the banquet would be held in the City Lord's mansion. However, although this person had received the invitation, he did not know to change the location. It seemed that this person's status in the banquet was not high. Coincidentally, I'm also going to attend the banquet. You can follow me, the manager of the Mountain Forest Restaurant said. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression was calm. He nodded slightly and kept the dark gold invitation. He then followed behind a short and fat middle-aged man, inviting him to curry favor with the envoy of the palace of the illusory god, and then changing the location without telling him. This Bloody Spring Mountain was really interesting. Not good. At this moment, the purple-eyed young man who had just walked out of the Bloody Spring Mountain's encampment had a drastic change in expression. The City Lord's mansion has changed location. I haven't told the envoy yet. Old servant has already sent someone to go. At this moment, Ingu spoke. Hearing this, the purple-eyed young man let out a sigh of relief. Although he had forgotten, he still had Ingu, this reliable old servant. However, in the next moment, Ingu's communication token flashed. Ingu lowered his head to look. His originally confident expression immediately became incomparably ugly. What? You didn't find him? Ingu said in disbelief. In the next moment, the purple-eyed young man's face turned ghastly pale. If they couldn't find him, didn't that mean the Lord Envoy of the illusory God Palace had already gone to the Mountain Forest Tower? Damn it. Ingu, I'll take my leave first. Hurry up and contact that person. Maybe Lord Messenger is just coincidentally cultivating? The purple-eyed young man said hurriedly. In the next moment, his body shot out like a rocket. Even when he was fighting for treasures with other disciples, he wasn't this fast. Ancient Nether City, City Lord Manor. At this moment, many people had already gathered in front of the City Lord's mansion. Without exception, All of them were cultivators who had not been informed of the change of venue and were holding an expired invitation and were rejected at the door. Seeing this group of cultivators, the short and fat manager of the mountain forest tower sighed. These cultivators, without exception, were all dressed in ordinary clothes and had ordinary faces. Their cultivation was only slightly stronger than the average person. For forces like Bloodspring Mountain and the City Lord's Mansion, it was nothing. Giving them an invitation was just a formality. As for whether these people would come or not, whether they could enter or not, it had nothing to do with them. Wait a moment. Let me bring you in. Although these rogue cultivators have some talent, they're just there to make up the numbers in front of the City Lord's Mansion and Bloodspring Mountain. With the face of the mountain forest tower, it shouldn't be a problem to bring in a rogue cultivator genius who already has an invitation. The manager of the mountain forest tower said. Tianyong was the same as them. He was dressed in ordinary clothes and had an ordinary appearance. His aura was only that of Wu Zun Realm Level 5. The only difference was the indifferent expression on his face from beginning to end. The manager of the mountain forest tower saw the shadow of his own youth in Tianyong. That was why he was so friendly to Tianyong. If it were someone else, the manager of the mountain forest tower would not care about their life or death. Okay, Tianyong nodded slightly. He was also curious about the manager of the mountain forest tower. He did not expect that in a situation where the entire race was incomparably tyrannical, there would still be a kind person like the manager of the mountain forest tower. Although this kind of person might not be that good, it was still extremely rare in the cultivation world. In the cultivation world, a kind person meant that they would not live long. Get out of my way. At this moment, a domineering shout suddenly came from behind. In the next moment, a young man, riding a tall horse with a long whip burning with flames in his hand, appeared in front of everyone. Why is it this guy? Seeing this young man, the manager of the mountain forest tower's expression changed. Why is this hedonistic young master also thinking of participating in this year's genius banquet? Shouldn't this guy be in the brothel every day? Get out of my way, too. At this moment, the young man also noticed Tianyong and Su Mo standing at the side of the road. A trace of impatience appeared on his face as he directly lashed out with his horsewhip. If Tianyong's cultivation was really like Wu Zun's LV5 cultivation level that he was pretending to be, if he was hit by this horsewhip, even if he did not die, it would definitely leave a huge scar on his body. It was even possible that all the bones in his body would be broken and he would be seriously injured, becoming a cripple from then on. Stop! At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the side. In the next moment, a figure appeared between Tianyong and the young man. Su Emoshi, don't make trouble in front of me. The person who appeared was naturally the purple-eyed young man who had immediately rushed to the mountain forest tower. After discovering that Tianyong was not in the mountain forest tower, the purple-eyed young man immediately rushed to the governor's mansion. It was fine if he did not arrive, but once he arrived, he saw a scene that almost made his heart shatter. Someone actually dared to attack the messenger of the illusory god palace. In Wuhua. At this moment, the young man with the horsewhip was suddenly stunned. Then, he looked at the purple-eyed young man and revealed a mocking smile. What, a guy like you who is willing to kneel down and lick others' boots dares to make trouble in front of me? Do you know that the person in front of you is your brother Su? The young man with the horsewhip sneered. Hearing this, the purple-eyed young man's heart surged with anger. Kneel down and lick others' boots? Don't get in my way. And you, come here immediately, kneel down and lick my shoes, otherwise you will die. Suemoshi, don't be too arrogant. When you meet the messenger of the illusory god palace, you also have to kneel down and lick his shoes. Seeing that the young man with the horsewhip still dared to be arrogant, the purple-eyed young man immediately shouted angrily. Hearing this, the young man with the horsewhip, Suemoshi's face suddenly darkened. Before he could speak, Tianyong, who was beside him, said indifferently,